Chapter 1701. Where are they? The leader's body trembled. Uncle Qiao asked someone to take care of them. I'm afraid they're already. Before he could finish his words, he was kicked unconscious. Lu Tingxiao, Yunshin, and Tang Lang, whose expressions had changed drastically, quickly ran inside. As soon as they stepped into the ruins in front of the building, Yunshin, who had been walking in front, suddenly stopped and clenched his trembling fingers into fists. Lu Tingxiao didn't stop. He walked past him and continued to move forward. Lu Tingxiao had walked far away, but Yunshin was still standing there, motionless. Tang Lang thoughtfully turned around to look at the man behind him. He seemed to have vaguely seen a flash of panic and helplessness in the man's eyes, which had always been absent-minded. Was he afraid? Afraid that he might see his junior sister's corpse later. Tang Lang was very surprised when Yunshin gave Lu Tingxiao the address, but now he seemed to understand. Could it be that Yunshin had no idea that Xiaobao and Ningxi had been kidnapped? Although he couldn't rule out the possibility that Xiaoyi had done these things behind his back, how could Lu Tingxiao be so sure that Yunshin would help them? He had known this man for so long, but he didn't dare to say that he completely understood his character and was sure that he would do something or not. Finally, they arrived at the ruins that had appeared in the video. The smell of gunpowder was mixed with a strong smell of blood. When they arrived, everyone was stunned. It was quiet in the ruins of the city. Apart from the whistling wind, there was no other sound. What was even more strange was that along the way, they saw some mercenaries lying on the ground. Tang Lang walked closer to check and was suddenly shocked. These people are all dead. Seeing that there were no wounds or bloodstains on them, he thought they were just unconscious, but when he walked closer to check, he found that they were all dead. Not only that, but these people had died in the same way. They had all suffered serious internal injuries, and their internal organs had been directly shattered. They had died on the spot. At this moment, Lu Tingxiao had quickly walked toward a pile of rocks. Next to the pile of rocks were the bodies of two mercenaries. The guns in their hands were scattered on the ground, and there was a large patch of dark red blood that hadn't dried up yet. What's going on? Tang Lang looked around vigilantly. At this moment, Yunshin also caught up. He stared at the bloodstains on the gravel and then glanced at the mercenaries' corpses. His face turned gloomy. After giving a look to his subordinates, someone immediately brought the small leader over. Where is he? Yunshin asked with a gloomy face. The leader scanned the surroundings and looked at the mercenaries who seemed to be dead on the ground. He was shocked. They were here just now. How did this happen? Uncle Zhou even specifically told them to clean up the corpses. The leader stole a glance at Lu Tingxiao. Send the body to the Lu family. Has anyone come in? Lu Tingxiao asked. The leader looked at Lu Tingxiao and didn't reply. He felt that he couldn't answer his sworn enemy's question in front of his boss. In the end, the next second his boss kicked him. I'm asking you a question. Has anyone else been here besides us? The leader hurriedly replied, No. Apart from you, no one else came in here. No one had ever gone out. We have people guarding this area. If anyone enters or exits, I will definitely know. Chapter 1702. There were guards everywhere, but none of them noticed anyone coming in and out. Lu Tingxiao, Yunshin, and Tang Lang's expressions changed when they heard that. Judging from the traces at the scene and the way the mercenaries died, there's only one person. This person actually avoided so many guards and even killed these mercenaries without anyone noticing? Tang Lang frowned as he spoke. Little junior sister and Xiaobao were probably taken away by him. But is he a friend or a foe? Why did he take them away? I don't remember such a person, Yunshin muttered. Tang Lang's expression was solemn. That's why I'm wondering where he came from. Even if Tang Yi and I work together, it's impossible for us to take two people away without a trace under such tight security. These mercenaries just died not long ago. The person must still be in Country F, split up and search everywhere. Lu Tingxiao immediately ordered all the men he brought with him, gather everyone. Search the entire city inside and out. Yunshin's face darkened as he gave the order. Pass, Lu Tingxiao said coldly to the silver-haired man before him. If they did not have the pass, they would definitely fight with Yunshin's men during the search, which would delay their time. Yunshin glanced at the leader. Give them the pass. The leader didn't dare to have any objections. He quickly gave everyone that Lu Tingxiao had brought over a pass. At this moment he was almost dumbfounded. Weren't these two sworn enemies? Why does boss listen to Lu Tingxiao? Even Tang Nua's heart skipped a beat when he saw this strange scene, let alone the leader. After getting the pass, Lu Tingxiao did not delay any further and quickly left with his men. The two groups of people quickly filled every corner of every city. China, the Lu family's old residence. At this moment, Lu Chongshan was lying weakly on the bed in his bedroom with an 4-drip in his hand. Xing Wu pushed the door open hurriedly. Master, is there any news from Tingxiao? Lu Chongshan struggled to sit up. Master, the doctor said you can't get up yet. Xing Wu went over to help him. Stop talking nonsense. Tell me how it is. Lu Chongshan urged. Xing Wu's expression was unsightly, and he looked very hesitant as if he didn't know what to say. Lu Chongshan looked at Xing Wu's expression and felt a chill run down his spine. His body began to tremble violently. Is it already? Seeing that Lu Chongshan misunderstood, Xing Wu hurriedly explained, No, young master and Miss Xiaoxi seem to be missing, lost, disappeared? How did he go missing? Lu Chongshan's face was full of shock. I don't know the details, but it said that young master has found the place where young master and Miss Xiaoxi were kidnapped, but he didn't find them when he arrived. Now he's looking for them in country F. Xing Wu hurriedly comforted her. Actually, it's good news that we can't find them. At least they're still alive. Master, don't worry. Otherwise, if something happens to you, young master will be distracted. Where's Xiaobao? Where was Xiaobao? Is Xiaobao back yet? Had Xiaobao been rescued? While Xing Wu and Lu Chongshan were talking, Yan Rui, who had just woken up, pushed the door open and walked in. Chapter 1703. Xing Wu felt a headache when he saw who it was. It's over. Old madam, Xing Wu Chongshan. Where's little treasure? Where was Xiaobao? Have you already redeemed Xiaobao? Yan Rui grabbed Xing Wu's arm. Looking at Lu Chongshan lying on the bed, her face was filled with fear. Did something happen to Xiaobao? Tell me. Did something happen to Xiaobao? Otherwise, why would Chongshan get sick? Lu Chongshan's face was filled with fatigue and he hurriedly tried to calm her down. Rui, calm down. No, Xiaobao is fine. Tingxiao has already gone to save him. After saying that, he glanced at Xing Wu. Xing Wu received Lu Chongshan's warning gaze and hurriedly added, Old master is right. Old madam, young master has already gone to redeem them. We'll be able to bring him back soon. Really? Yan Rui's expression softened. She reached out and clutched her chest. Then why can't I calm down? I felt the same way the last time Xiaobao was kidnapped. Can Tingxiao save Xiaobao? Xiaobao will be fine, right? Definitely not. Since the other party has proposed an exchange, as long as we satisfy their demands, the young master will definitely be fine. Old madam, please wait patiently. You still don't believe in young master? Xing Wu's tone was firm. All right. I'll go and chant the sutras. I'll go and ask the Buddha to bless us, Xiaobao, and that girl. Yan Rui nodded and left the room in a daze. Xing Wu and Lu Chongshan heaved a sigh of relief. After Yan Rui left, Lu Chongshan picked up his phone and clicked on the video again, trying to see if he could find any clues that he had missed before. Unfortunately, he found nothing. After a while, Yan Rui knocked on the door and entered with a cup of ginseng tea in her hand. Chongshan, have some ginseng tea. Lu Chongshan quickly put down his phone. All right, don't be so busy. Take a rest. I'm fine. I can't stay idle. Yan Rui's face was still filled with fear as she said to Lu Chongshan, Chongshan, do you remember? Master Xian Jing said that the lass had unparalleled luck and could turn misfortune into blessing. That lass also followed them. Her good fortune will protect our Xiaobao. So our Xiaobao will be fine this time, right? Don't doubt these things. Sometimes they really work. Lu Chongshan nodded in agreement. Yes, it will be fine. I don't doubt it. I believe you. Yan Rui felt a little better, probably because she had spiritual sustenance. She took Lu Chongshan's teacup and walked out. Lu Chongshan didn't notice that when Yan Rui left with the teacup, she secretly took his phone with her. By the time Lu Chongshan noticed his phone, it was already too late. In the next second, his wife's terrified scream came from outside the door. After a bang, there was no more sound. Lu Chongshan quickly pulled out the needle and stumbled out. Then he saw that his wife had fainted, and the phone beside her was playing the video recording. In the end, Yan Rui still didn't believe them. She probably saw him looking at his phone, so she stole his phone to look at it. Old madam, wake up. Xing Wu pinched Yan Rui's philtrum. Yan Rui slowly woke up and sat on the cold ground in a daze. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with a chill that sent chills down one's spine. Xiaobao is dead. My Xiaobao is dead. Is it? Chapter 1704. No, no madam, it's not what you see. Although, but it doesn't mean he's dead? Xingwu couldn't go on. Everyone knew that it was very unlikely for them to survive in such a tragic situation, especially for the girl. My Xiaobao is dead. My good grandson. Xiaobao is dead. Yen Rui's eyes were empty. She kept murmuring this sentence, and then her face was full of panic and helplessness. It's my fault. It's my fault. I killed Xiaobao. Why did I take Xiaobao from Ningxi? If Ningxi had been holding Xiaobao, Xiaobao wouldn't have been taken away. I didn't hold Xiaobao in my arms. I let Xiaobao be taken away. I killed my grandson. It's me. In the end Yen Rui broke down completely. She pounded her chest with all her might and choked with sobs. Grandma hurt you. Grandma hurt you. My Xiaobao. Lu Chongshan took his wife into his arms. Rui. All right. It's not your fault. It's not your fault, do you hear me? It's me. Everything happened because of me. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Uncle Lu, Auntie Lu. What's wrong? Guan Ziyao's voice came from the door. Behind her were her parents and her brother, Guan Zihao. You vicious woman. Give me back Xiaobao. Give me back Xiaobao. At that time, Ningxi had already rescued Xiaobao and handed him over to you. Why didn't you drive away with Xiaobao? Why didn't you save Xiaobao? Why did you give my grandson to those gangsters? Why did you kill my Xiaobao? No. Auntie Lu, I didn't. I was so scared that I forgot to react. I really didn't mean it. Auntie, believe me, I'm going to kill you. Kill you? Yen Rui's elegance and nobility had all disappeared without a trace at this moment. It was as if she was a lunatic who would not let go of Guan Ziyao. It took a long time for the others to recover from their shock. They hurriedly tried to calm him down. The scene was a mess. Doctor. Call the doctor. Give madam a sedative injection. Lu Chongshan shouted. After struggling for a long time, Yen Rui was finally pulled away and pressed down by someone. The doctor gave her a sedative injection before she finally calmed down. Guan Ziyao's cheeks were red and swollen, her hair was messy, and there were bloody scratches all over her exposed skin. She was supported by Guan Ziyao's mother and stood there in a trance. I'm sorry? Uncle Lu. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it. It's all my fault. Lu Chongshan was powerless to comfort Guan Ziyao, and he said tiredly, something happened to Xiaobao. Rui is quite emotional. Guan Rui's expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and asked, what did you mean when you said that Xiaobao was killed? Could it be that Xiaobao has already? Chapter 1705. Could Lil Bao be dead? Hearing this, Guan Ziyao, and Mrs. Guan looked at Lu Chongshan together. Lu Chongshan's expression was grim as he answered ambiguously, we're not sure about Lil Bao's condition yet. Tingxiao has already gone to look for him. Not sure? That meant, his life and death were uncertain and the odds were against him? Guan Rui's eyes flickered as he said sorrowfully, it's our Ziyao's fault. She's a timid girl and wasn't able to help much. She's been blaming herself for a long time and I'm really worried, so I came over to ask about the situation. I'm really sorry. Guan Zihao also consoled him, Uncle Lu, we're all very sad about Lil Bao. Please take care of yourself. The entire Lu family and the company depend on you. If there's anything you need our help with, just let us know. We'll do our best to help. Thank you, but that won't be necessary for now. I'm sorry we can't entertain guests today. Please go back first. Lu Chongshan said casually and sent the guests away. Outside the Lu residence. After getting into the car, Mrs. Guan's expression changed. She checked Guan Ziyao's wounds with heartache. Damn it. That Yen Rui is the daughter of a wealthy family. How is she a rich lady? She's a shrew. Look at how badly she beat our Ziyao up. She's too ruthless. Forget it. Her only precious grandson is dead. It's normal for her to be a little crazy, Guan Rui said, sounding like he was in a good mood. Didn't you say you're not sure? How do you know he's dead? Mrs. Guan asked. Don't you know Lu Chongshan's personality? He must have kept it a secret from Lu Tingxiao to protect the company and forced him to kill the hostage. Otherwise, why would Yen Rui be so agitated? Something must have happened and it bodes ill. Guan Rui opened his mouth and analyzed. Then, what about Ningxi? Guan Ziyao touched her red and swollen cheek with a gloomy face and asked. Guan Zihao said, "Little crown prince is dead. How could an insignificant person like her be spared? She'll die even earlier." "But that woman is quite skilled. Will she ruin things?" Guan Ziao asked worriedly. Guan Zihao raised an eyebrow. "Are you joking? No matter how powerful that woman was, she was only one person, and a woman at that. What could she do against a group of kidnappers? Just wait to be the young mistress of the Lu family." "But this incident has made Auntie Lu so estranged from me?" Guan Ziyao's face was full of worry. Mother Guan said nonchalantly, "Silly girl, she's just sad that she lost her grandson. When you give her another one, how could she not like it? He still treats you like a treasure." A mother's status depended on her sons. These 4 words were applicable everywhere. That's why I said that Lu Tingxiao's illegitimate son can't be left alive. The Lu family values this child too much. If they leave all the family assets to him in the future, wouldn't it be a great loss for us to have a marriage alliance with the Lu family? Even if nothing happened to the child this time, we will definitely find a way to get rid of him in the future. This time, it really saved us a lot of trouble, and we even killed 2 birds with 1 stone. We even got rid of that woman. Guan Zihao laughed. "Mother is right. Sister, don't worry. Let's go back and celebrate tonight. We should be able to hear the good news of that little bastard tomorrow." Chapter 1706. In Country F, Lu Tingxiao and Yun Shen had sealed off Country F and almost turned the entire country upside down, but they still couldn't find Ning Shi and Xiao Bao. Logically speaking, with a woman and a child in tow, it was impossible for the other party to disappear without a trace. Time was ticking away. Ning Shi and the baby would be in more danger if they were delayed for 1 more second. After another half an hour, Lu Tingxiao and Yun Shen met up in the city. They exchanged a look and knew that they hadn't found the other party. For a moment, the atmosphere was stagnant. Country F was very small, not even as big as some cities in China. Such a long time was enough for them to search several times, but they still couldn't find any trace, as if the other party had disappeared into thin air. Annie had been picked up by Yun Shen and was following him closely, in order to treat Ning Shi and Xiao Bao as soon as possible. Lu Tingxiao glanced at Annie. "How long can they last?" Annie's face was solemn. "Xiao Bao has been in Brother Shi's arms, so I can't see her injuries clearly, so I can't make a judgment. As for Brother Shi, she was shot in her calf, arm and abdomen. The most fatal one was the last shot. I guess her internal organs must have been seriously injured, and her head must have been badly injured." Annie couldn't go on. Even if she didn't die on the spot, if she didn't get timely treatment, she won't last long. Annie didn't answer how long Lu Tingxiao could last, because Ning Shi was so seriously injured, and they had been delayed for so long. She might have already. After Annie said that, there was a dead silence in the air, and the 2 men looked terrible. After a moment of torturous silence, Lu Tingxiao suddenly said, "Let's go back to where we were just now." Yun Shen's eyes flickered. "Where we were just now? What do you mean?" Tang Lang exclaimed, "That's right. We've been looking for so long, but we still can't find them. Could it be that they haven't left at all?" Therefore, a group of people rushed to the place where Ning Shi and Xiao Bao disappeared, and began to search every inch of the ruins and buildings of the ruined city. Shen, just as Lu Tingxiao, Yun Shen and the others were racing against time to find the person, an angry voice suddenly came from behind them. Hearing this voice, Yun Shen narrowed his eyes and turned around. There was a bone-chilling coldness in his eyes. Qiao Yi's face was full of anger as he strode towards the man. "Shen, are you crazy? He's not in the company. What are you doing here? What nonsense. Don't you know why I came here, Uncle Qiao?" The man asked coldly. "Shen, I didn't tell you about this because I didn't want to affect you. Everything I did was for your own good, and now you will destroy everything we have. I order you to return to the company immediately." Qiao Yi shouted angrily. Yun Shen chuckled in a low voice, "Ha, order me? Qiao Yi, who do you think you are to me? Who do you think you are? My uncle? Are you worthy? Are you even worthy of using the surname Yun?" Yun Shen. Qiao Yi's expression suddenly changed and he flew into a rage. Tang Lang, who was next to Yun Shen, and Tang Yi, who was next to Qiao Yi, were extremely surprised when they heard their conversation. What? Qiao Yi was actually Yun Shen's uncle? Chapter 1707. Qiao Yi used the name Tang Yi to outsiders. Only his own people knew that his real name was Qiao Yi. However, after hearing the conversation between the two of them, they were surprised to find that Xiao Yi had another name. Another identity? He and Yunshin actually had such a shocking relationship. Xiao Yi's expression was not much better. It was extremely gloomy. Yunshin, how dare you talk to me like this just for a woman? Are you going to watch everything we've done for so many years go down the drain just for a woman? Have you forgotten how your mother died? Do you want her to have no peace in the underworld? Tang Lang, who was standing opposite him, picked his ears and complained to himself. Tieske, it was this line again. He had heard it so many times that his ears had calluses. Couldn't he say something else? Hearing Xiao Yi's words, Yunshin lowered his head and chuckled. Yes, that's right. It's for a woman. At this point, the man abruptly withdrew the smile on his face. His eyes, which had always been careless, were now filled with an overwhelming gloominess. I warned you long ago, don't touch her. Xiao Yi looked at the expression on Yunshin's face and his heart skipped a beat. In fact, he was already regretting it. He knew Yunshin's character too well. It was difficult for anyone to enter his heart, but once he drew someone into his territory, he would completely include them in his territory and would not allow anyone else to touch them. He had indeed gone too far this time. But when he thought of what had happened in the past and saw Lu Chongshan's face, he couldn't help but get rid of that traitorous girl as well. He hadn't expected Yunshin's reaction to be more intense than he had imagined. This time, even his mother couldn't restrain him. Yunshin, it's just a woman. You can have as many as you want in the future. A traitor isn't worth it for you to do this for her. Come back with me now, Before Xiao Yi could finish his sentence, Lu Tingxiao and his men had just finished searching the building behind him and walked out. Xiao Yi's expression suddenly changed. He immediately ordered all his men, capture Lu Tingxiao. Lu Tingxiao's expression didn't change at all. He walked straight to Xiao Yi and stopped opposite him. Xiao Yi sneered and said, Boss Lu, you're really brave. There's a way out for you, but you're barging into hell. As he spoke, Lu Tingxiao and his men were surrounded by Xiao Yi's men. Damn it, since I can't persuade Yunshin, I'll just get rid of Lu Tingxiao once and for all. At this time, Yunshin took 2 steps toward Lu Tingxiao unhurriedly. He glanced at the crowd lazily and said, I'd like to see who dares to touch him. Cloud Depths. Have you really gone mad? Do you know what you're doing? Xiao Yi was in disbelief as he looked at the 2 people standing side by side. He couldn't believe that Yunshin would help Lu Tingxiao. Now that Lu Tingxiao was in his territory, he didn't want to miss out on such a rare opportunity. Xiao Yi didn't have time to think and immediately ordered, Everyone attack. The surrounding subordinates looked at each other. For a moment, no one dared to move. How dare you disobey my orders? Xiao Yi was furious. The people he had brought here were all his trusted subordinates, and Country F was under his control. But now, these people were not listening to his orders. Chapter 1708. Xiao Yi's chest heaved violently, and his face was filled with disbelief. In order to prevent Yunshin from losing control like today, he had single-handedly controlled the most important forces in the dark. Yunshin didn't seem to care about these things and had never said anything about it. He had shown great trust in him and left everything to him. He had thought that he had really controlled everything all these years, but only now did he realize that he had underestimated the person in front of him. Yunshin adjusted his cuffs, and a trace of impatience flashed in his eyes. He said faintly, Send Uncle Qiao back to rest. He's getting old. Staying up late isn't good for his health. Seeing that Xiao Yi was forcibly taken away, Feng Jin lowered his head and didn't say a word, trying to reduce his presence as much as possible. He was one of Xiao Yi's most important confidants. If Xiao Yi and Yunshin fell out, he would be the first person Yunshin dealt with. Although Tang Yi wanted to say something, he also knew that he couldn't change the current situation on his own. If he said anything more, he might anger Yunshin, so he could only keep quiet. At this moment, the man in front of him had torn apart the layer of harmless and indifferent facade. The violent, bloodthirsty, and sick side of him was raging like a time bomb that could explode at any time. Keep looking. If you can't find her in 3 minutes, all of you will be buried with me. 3 minutes? They couldn't find a trace of her after searching for so long. How could he find her in 3 minutes? The scene instantly became deathly silent. Looking at the tyrant in front of them, the people who had participated in this kidnapping were filled with regret. However, they were just following orders. Just when everyone was shrouded in the shadow of death, Lu Tingxiao, who was working quickly on a computer, said coldly in the direction of the man, Come here. Are you calling for a dog? A trace of displeasure flashed in the tyrant's eyes, but he still walked over. Lu Tingxiao said, "What's the password?" Yun Shen glanced at Lu Tingxiao's computer screen, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. "You found it?" City was almost a wasteland and the surveillance in the city was almost destroyed. What Lu Tingxiao found was the only surveillance network in this abandoned city. When he first took control of F country, the password for Skynet was reset by Yunshin. Password? Lu Tingxiao urged impatiently. Yunshin pursed his lips. That girl's birthday. Lu Tingxiao, Tang Lang and Tang Yi, for such an important password, why would you use such a simple number like birthday? No. That's not the point. Most importantly, this guy actually used junior sister's birthday as the password. Fuck. I couldn't tell that this pervert had the heart of a young man. Tang Lang crossed his arms over his chest and whispered into Tang Ye's ear. After a short pause, Lu Tingxiao quickly entered Ningxi's birthday and then retrieved the surveillance video of that time. Compared to the blurry video on Lu Chongshan's phone, this surveillance camera had a bird's-eye view of the entire abandoned city ruins. The equipment was considered high-end, and it was still very clear at night. The effect was much better than the video on Lu Chongshan's phone. Even the expressions on people's faces could be seen clearly. Lu Tingxiao immediately adjusted the surveillance to the time when those people were preparing to deal with Ningxi. Then he wanted to see what had happened and who the mysterious person who had suddenly appeared was. Chapter 1709. On the screen, Ningxi was dragged out from under a pile of rocks by two mercenaries. The girl was covered in wounds and blood. It was hard to tell whether she was dead or alive. Xiao Bao, who was in his arms, was also covered in blood. It was hard to tell whether it was his blood or Ningxi's. One of the mercenaries kicked Ningxi and cursed, "Bitch! You killed two of our brothers." Another mercenary next to him said impatiently, "Stop talking nonsense. The higher-ups have ordered for death by dismemberment. Hurry up. Don't let anything happen." TSK, the most interesting thing about death by dismemberment is that it's carried out when people are awake. They can only watch as their flesh is cut off piece by piece until only the bones are left. It's really boring now. But what do you think Lu Chongshan's expression will be when he sees his grandson turned into a pile of minced meat? Most of these vicious mercenaries were psychopathic. They were bloodthirsty and took pleasure in torturing people. At this moment they were all looking forward to it. It's a pity for such a little beauty. With her skills, if she leaves this little brat behind, she actually has a chance to escape. TSK. Beauty first. I'll start with you first. The mercenary held a gleaming knife and approached the girl with a sneer. Lu Tingxiao and Yun Shen, who were staring at the screen, suddenly changed their expressions. The surveillance camera couldn't hear the sound, but after zooming in, they could roughly hear their conversation through lip language. The mercenary approached Ningxi with a cold and happy expression. He used the knife to cut a wound on Ningxi's arm, and blood immediately gushed out. Just as he was about to continue, the mercenary thought of something and stopped his action temporarily. He took out something from his pocket. It was a silver whistle the size of a thumb, engraved with simple patterns. He had found this whistle on the woman's body before. Because he recognized that the pattern had a great background, he secretly kept it. The mercenary looked at the pattern totem and then at the woman. He looked a little hesitant. How could this woman have such a thing? She couldn't possibly be related to that legendary family, could she? But that's impossible. So, how did this thing appear on this woman's body? There were very few people who knew about this totem symbol. It was impossible for it to appear on a whistle. Also, what was this thing used for? The more the mercenary thought about it, the more confused he became. He picked up the whistle and blew it. It looked like a whistle, but it didn't make any sound. It seemed to be solid inside. Then, he fumbled with the whistle and continued to look at it carefully. Hey, what are you waiting for? Only when someone urged him did the mercenary put the whistle back. Fuck. Where's Chui Han? What's the rush? Do you think he can escape? Forget it, no matter where this girl came from or what relationship she had with that family, she had to die today. Besides, that family only existed in legends. How could it be true? After this short interlude, the mercenary picked up his knife again and approached the girl. At this moment, the mercenary with the bloodthirsty smile on his face suddenly widened his eyes and fell to the ground. Oh, what's going on? The surrounding mercenaries raised their weapons and looked around cautiously. However, they didn't even see the silhouettes clearly before they silently fell to the ground one by one. The entire abandoned city was left in a deathly silence. Chapter 17:10. Then a man appeared in the image. He had long black hair and was as beautiful as a fairy. The man took out the whistle from one of the mercenaries and walked in front of Ningxi. He opened his thin lips and said, "You're really lucky." After saying that, he bent over and picked up the girl, disappearing in a few leaps. Tang Lang and Tang Yi exclaimed at the same time when they saw the man. "Fuck. It's him. It's him? Do you know each other?" Yunshin asked. Lu Tingxiao also frowned. He had seen that whistle in Ningxi's hand. At that time, Ningxi said that a powerful master owed her a favor and gave it to her. She said that the master would come to save her, but it seemed that there was an accident. Ningxi didn't have time to think of this whistle and blow it in time before it was taken away by those mercenaries. At the last moment, the mercenary blew the whistle by himself, and the expert must have been nearby, which was why he was able to rush over so quickly. No wonder that man said "You're lucky." Lu Tingxiao was shaken to the core just by imagining it. The master that Ningxi mentioned should be the man in the image. Since the man owed Ningxi a favor, he should be a friend and not an enemy. Tang Lang was extremely excited as he said, "This guy interrupted my duel with Tang Yi that night, and the man who beat the shit out of him, Tang Yi, and I couldn't even get close to him. He's a freaking monster. Why did this guy appear here to save little junior sister? How did he know little junior sister?" "That's not the point. I think he went to the cemetery," Tang Yi said. "The cemetery?" They didn't have time to think and immediately led everyone to the cemetery. The cemetery was very close to them, but they had already patrolled the area and didn't find any traces. They finally arrived at the cemetery and patrolled it again. As expected, they found nothing. At this moment, a creepy creaking sound came from somewhere in the gloomy graveyard. Everyone straightened their backs and looked in the direction of the sound. Accompanied by the sound of the gates of hell opening, a man's cold voice suddenly rang out in the cemetery. "Hey you guys, who is this girl's man?" Lu Tingxiao, Yunshin, Tang Lang, Tang Yi, and the other subordinates rushed toward the man. When they got closer, they realized that it was indeed the man in the surveillance camera. Hearing the man's question, Yunshin frowned slightly. "It's me. Who are you? Where is Tangxi?" The man furrowed his brows and said seriously, "I hate lying." Yunshin was speechless. How could this guy say that he had deceived him? The man ignored Yunshin's ugly expression and looked in Lu Tingxiao's direction like an eagle. "It's you, right? You look exactly like that little guy." "It's me." Lu Tingxiao ignored Yunshin's expression and quickly walked toward the man. At this moment, an ancient tomb appeared behind the man. There were oil lamps on both sides, and it was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. "Follow me." The long-haired man walked down. As soon as Lu Tingxiao followed him in, the door immediately closed and disappeared into the weeds without a trace. Chapter 17:11. After passing through a long corridor, they arrived at a secret room. There were two people lying on the stone bed in the secret room. They were Ningxi and Xiaobao. After searching for so long, they finally found them. "How are they?" Lu Tingxiao's voice trembled as he approached. He reached out to touch the girl but didn't dare to touch the wounds all over her body. Ningxi's wounds seemed to have been treated, but he couldn't feel her breathing. Xiaobao's body was moving up and down slightly. The man replied, "I'm fine. I'm not good with children, so I put him to sleep for now. As for the big one?" Lu Tingxiao asked, "How is the big one?" The man looked at the girl on the stone bed and sighed slightly. His expression was a little complicated. After a while, he considered his words and said, "I specialize in external injuries. I can only protect her for a while. Take her to the hospital immediately. I can't guarantee her life after that." The man's words gave Lu Tingxiao an ominous premonition. "Good. Thank you." China, Imperial City Hospital. After a difficult night of searching, Lu Tingxiao finally found Ningxi and Xiaobao. Yunshin didn't go to the hospital with them and only asked Annie to accompany them. Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan, who had been waiting for news at home, rushed to the hospital immediately. Lu Jingli also rushed over from the company. "Tingxiao, where's Xiaobao? Where's my Xiaobao? Where's Xiaobao?" Yan Rui's face was extremely pale and haggard. She clutched Lu Tingxiao's clothes tightly, her bloodshot eyes wide open in fear. Lu Chongshan panted heavily as he walked over with the support of his walking stick. "How's Xiaobao?" Lu Jingli looked at Lu Tingxiao standing in front of the operating room in a daze. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Brother, is Xiaobao? After a while Lu Tingxiao finally said, Xiaobao is fine. Yan Rui, Lu Chongshan and Lu Jingli were all stunned when they heard Lu Tingxiao's words. What? Tingxiao, what did you just say? Brother, you said Xiaobao is fine? Tingxiao, tell me the truth. Don't comfort mom. How is Xiaobao? As long as he's not dead. Even if he's on his last breath, I won't ask for much. Looking at the anxious Lu family members, Tang Lang, who was leaning against the wall, said, Stop arguing. Didn't I already say that everything is fine? He's upstairs in the ward. You can go and see for yourselves. When Lu Chongshan and Yan Rui heard this, they rushed upstairs with Lu Jingli's help. As soon as the three of them walked to the door of the ward, they saw a doctor in a white coat coming out of the ward. Doctor. How's our Xiaobao? The person who treated Xiaobao was the vice president. When he saw the two of them, he quickly said, Old Master Lu, Old Madam Lu, don't worry. Your grandson is safe and sound. He only suffered some superficial injuries. He's still unconscious now, but he'll wake up soon. Hearing the doctor's words, Yan Rui was stunned. She couldn't believe her ears. And doctor, what did you just say? You said Xiaobao is fine? Do you think our Xiaobao is fine? Yes, you can visit him now. You can go in and see him, the deputy director comforted. I'll go now. I'm going now. The three of them rushed into the hospital. Sure enough, they saw the little fellow lying on the bed, perfectly fine. Yan Rui grabbed the little fellow's hand. It was warm. She touched the little fellow's beating heart and the steady breathing on the tip of his nose. Only then did she finally believe that the person in front of her was alive and well. Xiaobao is alive. My Xiaobao is still alive and well. God bless us. God bless us. Yan Rui couldn't hold it in any longer. She held onto Xiaobao's hand and started sobbing. Lu Chongshan was also so emotional that tears streamed down his face. He originally thought that Xiaobao was doomed this time. He never imagined that Xiaobao would actually return to their side in one piece. Lu Jingli's expression became increasingly grim as he looked at his excited parents and the safe and sound Xiaobao. Dad, Mom. I'm going downstairs to see my sister-in-law. I don't know how she's doing. Chapter 17:12. Yes, there's also that girl. Yan Rui suddenly remembered. Take care of Xiaobao. I'll go down and have a look. Lu Chongshan looked at Xiaobao reluctantly and touched the little fellow's warm face. Only then did he leave with Lu Jingli and headed downstairs. Yan Rui watched the two of them leave with a worried look on her face. When Lu Chongshan and Lu Jingli went downstairs, the red light of the operating room was still on and Ningxi was still in there. How's the girl? Lu Chongshan asked. Lu Tingxiao had been sitting on the cold bench with his head down. He didn't respond to his father's words at all. Tang Lang snorted. Her arms, abdomen, left and right legs. She was shot everywhere. Her scapula was fractured, 3 of her ribs were broken, and her head was... Lu Chongshan's face turned paler with every word Tang Lang said. He had seen the girl's injuries in the video. How could he not know? Lu Jingli didn't know what to say. He walked up to Lu Tingxiao and put his hand on his stiff shoulder to comfort him. Sister-in-law is very lucky. She'll be fine. Lu Tingxiao still didn't respond. Lu Jingli knew that he wouldn't listen to any comforting words, so he told him to stay there quietly. His own brother didn't say anything, but Tang Lang was a powder keg. Lu Jingli was so anxious that he was walking around in circles. When he saw Annie at the corner, he hurriedly walked over as if he had seen his savior. Hey, you must be my sister-in-law's friend, that little divine doctor called Annie, right? Annie nodded. She looked absent-minded. How is my sister-in-law? She'll be fine with you, right? Lu Jingli asked anxiously. Annie glanced at him and said calmly, I couldn't help. No matter how powerful she was, she couldn't replace the modern medical system. Besides, the mysterious man had treated Brother Shi perfectly. Even she couldn't have done it so well. If Brother Shi hadn't met that man, he wouldn't have survived until he came to the hospital. After saying that, she didn't say another word. She just continued to stare at the operating room. Lu Jingli looked into Annie's eyes and for some reason he saw an ominous sign in the depths of her eyes. Time ticked by, the operation lasted from late at night until dawn, but it was still not over. At 6:00 in the morning, the red light in the operating theater dimmed with a thud. The door of the operating theater was finally opened from the inside. 2 surgical assistants walked out first, followed by the chief surgeon. The doctor's entire body was drenched in sweat, and his surgical gown was sticking to his body. After he came out, he took off the mask on his face, revealing a pained expression. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they saw the doctor's expression. At this time Yen Rui had also rushed over. She was chanting and praying with her eyes closed. When she saw the doctor coming out, she immediately went up and asked, "Doctor, how was the operation? What happened to the child?" Under everyone's gaze, the doctor deliberated over his words before saying, "I'm very sorry. We've tried our best to save him and the surgery was very successful. However, the patient's injuries are too severe, and he still hasn't woken up. The patient is currently unable to breathe on his own, and his brainstem reflexes and brainwaves have disappeared." Chapter 17:13. Hearing the doctor's answer, everyone was stunned and couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. After a long time, Lu Jingli asked agitatedly, "What do you mean by involuntary breathing? What do you mean by brainstem reflexes disappearing? Aren't these descriptions used to describe a dead person? Doctor, can you explain it more clearly?" The chief surgeon was the director himself. He knew how important this surgery was, but he could only speak the truth. The patient is now in a deep coma. Currently, we can only use the ventilator and medicine to maintain the patient's signs of life. Once the life support system is removed, the patient will die immediately. Following the doctor's words, the entire corridor fell into a dead silence. Yen Rui's face turned pale as she fell onto the bench. How could this be? How could this be? Lu Tingxiao sat there like a statue, motionless. The doctor paused and looked at Lu Tingxiao. "My condolences, family member. I'm sorry, but I still have to ask, do we continue to maintain the patient's life or remove the life support system and let the patient leave in peace? What will happen if we continue to maintain the patient's life?" After a while, Tang Lang asked with a trembling voice, "If we continue to maintain the patient's life, he will be in a vegetative state and may lie in bed for the rest of his life. Generally speaking, even if we use machines and medicine to maintain the patient's life, it can only last for a dozen years at most because the patient's life functions will gradually deteriorate over time." The doctor replied and sighed. Although this was considered living, it was actually suffering. With every word the doctor said, everyone's hearts grew colder. "Of course we continue to maintain the life support. Even if he is in a vegetative state, there will be a day when he wakes up," Lu Jingli hurriedly said. The doctor nodded. "That's right. Although the chances of this happening are very small, there are many precedents. Do you still need to ask? Of course we continue to maintain the life support." Lu Jingli immediately made a decision. The doctor looked a little uncertain. In the end he turned to Lu Tingxiao and asked, "Boss Lu, you mean?" Lu Jingli saw that the doctor was still questioning his brother and was extremely anxious. Asking his brother this kind of question, wasn't it like stabbing a knife into his heart? After an unknown amount of time, the man's hoarse and broken voice finally sounded in the empty corridor. "Continue to maintain the life support." "Okay, I understand." The doctor sighed and left. In the VIP ward. At this moment, the girl who had always been as carefree as the wind was lying quietly on the bed. Her body was covered with cuts and bruises, and she had lost all consciousness. She could only rely on the ventilator to maintain her life. Lu Tingxiao sat in front of the hospital bed expressionlessly. He carefully picked up the girl's small hand that was covered with small scars and kissed it very gently. It seemed that he was afraid of disturbing her, even though he knew that she might never wake up again. "Xiaoxi. I'm sorry, forgive my selfishness, I can't let you go." "Sorry?" Outside the door, Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan did not go in due to self-blame and guilt. They looked at the situation inside the ward through the window with a solemn expression. They saw that their eldest son, who was always serious and apathetic, who would not bat an eyelid even when faced with great difficulties, was now holding the girl's hands and burying his head in his hands. His shoulders were trembling, and he was sobbing uncontrollably. Chapter 17:14. All this time they had misunderstood her, doubted her and denied everything she had done for Xiaobao. They believed that she would definitely hurt him. But, in the end, when Xiaobao was in danger, she was the only one who had risked everything to protect him. Under those circumstances, she had protected Xiaobao unscathed while facing those jerks. Yet, Yen Rui had been injured to such an extent that she might never wake up again. Yen Rui's heart clenched with guilt and regret as the scene of the girl carrying Xiao Bao and running at full speed despite being shot appeared in his mind. He recalled the scene of the girl's first reaction at the moment before the artillery shell arrived to protect Xiao Bao firmly under her body. What kind of pain and torture did this girl have to endure to ensure Xiao Bao's safety? Even if she didn't understand, she could tell that the girl was very skilled. With her skills, if she hadn't been carrying Xiao Bao, she might have been able to escape. Moreover, this disaster had nothing to do with her, yet she had gone to such lengths for Xiao Bao. She really liked and loved Xiao Bao. This kind of love was no less than a mother's love for her child. How could a mother harm her own child? Yen Rui looked at the girl in the ward, who was covered in wounds and was drowning in regret. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have misunderstood that girl. She was someone Ting Xiao trusted so much. Xiao Bao liked so much. Why didn't I try to get to know her better? If I had believed Ting Xiao and Xiao Bao, believed that girl, none of this would have happened. Now that this girl is in this state, how am I going to face Ting Xiao? When Xiao Bao wakes up, how am I going to explain things to him? Lu Chongshan stood there in a daze as he listened to his wife's sobs. In just one night, his hair had turned completely white and he looked like he had aged 10 years. His grandson had been saved. But, as he looked at the girl in the ward, the Lu family owed this girl too much. Even if they did everything they could, they wouldn't be able to repay her. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Because of his stubbornness, he had almost killed his grandson. In the end, an innocent person had to suffer the consequences. If he could, he would rather he had been the one to suffer the consequences. But now there was no turning back. At the end of the quiet corridor, Annie stood in a daze for a long time before she finally picked up her phone and made a call. Hello? How is she? The man's husky voice came from the other end of the phone. Annie was silent for a long time. The person on the other end of the phone was silent as well. He didn't rush her. Half a day later, the girl took a deep breath and said, "The operation has just ended. Although it was a success, Brother Shi's injuries are too severe. He can't wake up and can only be kept alive with a ventilator. If I'm lucky, I don't know when I'll wake up, or maybe I'll never wake up." As soon as the girl finished speaking, there was no response from the other end of the phone. "Brother Shin?" Annie sounded worried. "It's okay. You stay there. If you can help, just do it." The man hung up the phone. In the darkness, the man stared blankly at the complicated strand diagram on the flickering computer screen and murmured softly, "Have these things. I'll give them to you as a dowry. If you don't wake up, other women will take advantage of them." Chapter 17:15. The sun rose and its bright light shone over the entire city. The battle between the Lu Group and Elon Ventures ended with the Lu Group's victory. Elon Ventures suffered heavy losses due to the sharp fall in many of its important investments and the huge liquidated damages from its partners. It had no choice but to sell a large number of Lu Corporation's shares to pay off its debts and withdraw from Lu Corporation's board of directors overnight. However, this matter had shaken the foundation of Lu Corporation. There were still many things to deal with and the other side could fight back at any time. Lu Jingli seemed to have matured overnight. The playboy who used to be cynical and muddle along was now silently shouldering everything. This broken family and the chaotic company. Since the end of Ningxi's operation, Lu Tingxiao had been accompanying the girl all the time. Lu Jingli turned his head away to hide his reddened eyes. He turned to look at the man in front of the bed and said seriously, "Brother, don't worry. I'll take care of the company and Mom and Dad. You just need to stay with sister-in-law. Don't think about anything else." He knew how much pain and regret his brother must be feeling right now. He still remembered the moment before the bad news came. Lu Tingxiao suddenly asked him to pick up Ningxi and put her in his line of sight. He must have sensed the danger then. Lu Tingxiao tightened his grip on the girl's hands and a bitter smile appeared on his face. What's the use of staying with her now? Although he didn't want to admit it, he clearly knew that those photos and his jealousy towards that man had caused him to lose his rationality and judgment in this matter. He wanted to solve all of this, but he had neglected the most important thing. He kept asking her to wait. Wait for everything to be settled. But now she couldn't see it. If he had been a little more considerate, perhaps none of this would have happened. At the thought of this, great despair and regret swallowed him up. He thought if only he had been more considerate, if only he had been calmer and not so radical, if only he hadn't provoked her from the beginning, if only he hadn't forced her into his world. She was so unrestrained, so free, so passionate, and the person she liked was the same as her. However, for him, she had slowly retracted her edges, folded her wings, changed herself bit by bit, wronged herself, and even risked her life for him. Maybe I was wrong from the beginning. I shouldn't have forced her to be with me. At this moment, the man's tone had faded all the arrogance and loneliness. He was so fragile that it seemed to break at the slightest touch. Lu Jingli had never seen the proud Lu Tingxiao look so fragile and decadent. His heart suddenly ached. "Brother, what nonsense are you talking about? Little Cece really likes you, okay?" Lu Jingli was anxious. Just as he was about to console her, his phone rang. It was Yen Rui. "Hello Mom, what's wrong?" "Hey Jingli, come over quickly. It's best if your brother comes over quickly as well. Lil Treasure is awake." Yen Rui's panicked voice came from the other end of the phone. Jingli suddenly became anxious. "Xiaobao woke up? Okay, I'm coming." Chapter 17:16. Downstairs in the ward. "Xiaobao, you're awake. Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Grandma will get someone to make it for you." "Xiaobao, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Tell Grandpa." Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan carefully helped Xiaobao up and stood in front of the bed. The two of them asked each other anxiously. On the hospital bed, the little fellow had already changed into a clean hospital gown and was sitting there quietly. There was a small band-aid on the back of his hand. There was no expression on his pale little face. His gaze slowly fell on Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan, who had been talking to him all along. This was the scene that Lu Jingli and Lu Tingxiao saw when they rushed over. The two old men had been talking to the child worriedly. Xiaobao, who was surrounded in the middle, sat quietly on the bed. His little face was expressionless, and his eyes were like a pool of stagnant water. There was no light in them, as if only his shell was left here. "Jingli Tingxiao, come and see Xiaobao." "What's wrong with Xiaobao? He's been in a daze ever since he woke up. There's no reaction at all. He won't speak even when we ask him." Yen Rui looked flustered. Lu Jingli walked over to hug the little fellow and patted his shoulder. "Xiaobao, don't be afraid. It's all right now. You're safe now. No bad people will hurt you anymore. Look, Grandpa, Grandma and us are all here. We'll protect you." At this moment, the door opened and Xing Wu hurriedly walked in with several boxes of food. "Madam, the food is ready." "All right, bring it over quickly." Yen Rui hurriedly took it from him. "Xiaobao, you haven't eaten for so long. You must be hungry. Do you want to eat something?" Yes, eat something first." The few of them busied themselves for half a day. However, no matter what they said or did, the little fellow on the bed remained expressionless and did not respond at all. Yen Rui's hands trembled as she held the boxes of food. She burst into tears. "What should we do?" Lu Chongshan closed his eyes and his face was filled with disappointment. In the end, he had harmed Xiaobao. Under the patient company of that girl, Xiaobao had already completely recovered. He had become so lively, scary, smart, and adorable. But now he had become even worse than before. Lu Jingli's eyes were red as he said, "Xiaobao must know. He knows that little Cece did it for him. He doesn't want to wake up so that he doesn't have to face these things." The atmosphere in the ward was stagnant. After who knew how long, Lu Tingxiao, who had been silent all this time, walked to the bed and looked at his son, who had a blank look in his eyes. "I'll take you to see her." Hearing this, Yen Rui became anxious and said in a low voice, "How can we do that?" Lu Chongshan frowned and said, "Lil Bao has suffered such a huge fright. He's already in a terrible situation. If he were to see that girl like this." Lu Tingxiao bent over and picked up his son from the bed. "He will have to face it sooner or later. But this is too cruel." Although Yen Rui knew that this matter couldn't be hidden, she still couldn't bear it. Lu Tingxiao held his son and went upstairs to Ningxi's ward. At the door, Lu Tingxiao gently put his son down. The little fellow stood at the door and his eyes fell mechanically on the bed in the middle of the room. There was a woman lying on the bed. Her face was pale and her body was covered with bandages. She was wearing a respirator and her body was connected to countless complicated wires and tubes. It looked terrible. The person who was lying on the hospital bed looking very scary was his mother. Chapter 17:17. Lu Chongshan, Yen Rui, and Lu Jingli all looked at Xiaobao anxiously, afraid that he would lose control of his emotions when he saw this scene. They had even asked the doctor to make all kinds of preparations. However, what awaited them was something worse than losing control of his emotions. Even after seeing Ningxi, the little boy still had no reaction. The dull expression on his face was exactly the same as before. What they were most worried about still happened. The child had seen Ningxi get shot and injured with his own eyes. Under extreme fear and an ominous premonition, he was knocked unconscious by Ningxi. He might even have woken up in Ningxi's arms at the last moment. In his subconscious, perhaps Ningxi was already dead. So he would forever exist in that world with his dead mother. Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan's faces were full of despair as they looked at their emotionless grandson who had no reaction to the outside world. Xiaobao had walked out because of Ningxi. But this time without Ningxi, who else could make Xiaobao walk out of the shadows a second time? Lu Jingli, who was behind them, was anxious. He hurried over and carried Xiaobao to Ningxi's bed. He placed Xiaobao on the edge of Ningxi's bed and gently touched Ningxi's cheek with his little hand. "Baby, look, it's mommy." However, the little boy was like a puppet on strings, manipulated mechanically. Lu Jingli's heart fell to the bottom. He hugged the little boy in his arms with heartache. "Xiaobao, wake up." At this moment, Lu Tingxiao's cold and deep voice rang out in the ward. She was shot in the arm, abdomen, and leg. Her scapula is comminuted and 3 ribs are broken. Hearing Lu Tingxiao's words, Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan looked extremely nervous. They didn't understand why their son was continuing to provoke Xiaobao. They hurriedly pulled him to stop him. However, Lu Tingxiao continued without hesitation. "She's currently in a PVS state, which means she's in a vegetative state. Because her injuries are too serious, she might not wake up for the rest of her life even though her life is saved." At this point, Lu Tingxiao looked at his son, who was tensing up. He knew that he had heard his words. Of course, she might suddenly wake up one day. This required the person she cared about the most, the person closest to her, and the person she loved the most to always be by her side, calling out to her and protecting her. Your mother worked so hard to protect you. If you have the heart to let her continue to lie there for the rest of her life, if you have the heart to let her exchange her life for a terrible person like you, then you can continue like this. Lu Tingxiao paused and then said, "Xiaobao, mommy needs you." As soon as Lu Tingxiao's voice fell, the little guy's hollow eyes finally changed, and his little hand on Ningxi's cheek moved slightly. Yan Ru noticed that Xiaobao was suddenly staring at the food container in her hand. She hurriedly walked over and asked, "Xiaobao, do you want to eat something?" Xiaobao stared blankly at the food in Yan Rui's hand and nodded. Seeing that Xiaobao finally had a reaction, Yan Rui was overjoyed. Lu Chongshan and Lu Jingli also heaved a sigh of relief. "Come, Xiaobao, have some porridge first. This porridge is very glutinous and fragrant." Xiaobao picked up the bowl of porridge and quickly drank half of it as if he was extremely hungry. Drink slowly, drink slowly. There's more." Xiaobao drank 2 bowls of porridge in a row before he stopped. Then he quickly turned around and crawled to Ningxi's side to lie down. He took his mother's hand and touched his round belly. "Mommy, get up. Xiaobao is fine. Xiaobao is very obedient." Chapter 17-18. At the Guan residence. "How was it? Did you find out? What's the situation?" Mrs. Guan asked anxiously when she saw her son. Guan Ziao also looked over anxiously. "Brother, how are Xiaobao and that woman?" Mother Guan muttered with an unfriendly expression. "He's too lucky. He can even be saved in this situation." Guan Rui sat there unhurriedly. "What's the rush? Let Zihao explain." Guan Zihao took off his jacket and drank half a cup of tea. "Mom Ziao, don't worry. Although they've been saved, there's no difference in the outcome. These 2 people are no longer a threat to us." "Not a threat? Do you mean they've been crippled by those people? I heard that they're all outlaws and they're the best at torturing people." Mrs. Guan asked. "It's worse than that. That vixen has become a vegetable. As for Lu Tingxiao's illegitimate son, I asked someone in the hospital about him. They said that he was too frightened and didn't speak or drink after he woke up. He's like a wooden man and his condition is worse than before. He's basically crippled." Guan Zihao explained to them in detail. Hearing this, Mr. Guan and Mrs. Guan were overjoyed. "Are you serious? Is the news reliable?" "Of course it's reliable. You can prepare to visit him later and ask about the situation," Guan Zihao said confidently. Guan Ziao relaxed when she heard this, but she was still a little worried. "There's still a chance that he'll wake up from a vegetable, right?" Mrs. Guan was anxious too. Yes. What if that woman wakes up? That little bitch is very capable. If she wakes up and coaxes Xiaobao back to normal, wouldn't all our efforts be in vain? Guan Zihao said nonchalantly, how can a vegetable wake up so easily? Also, that woman's injuries are very serious. The chances of her waking up are very small. Even if she's lucky, it'll probably be 8 to 10 years later. Lu Tingxiao isn't stupid. Why would he waste so much time waiting for a vegetable? Even if he's willing, it depends on whether Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui are willing. I'm afraid, the longer we delay, the more trouble we'll have. Guan Rui pondered, then looked at his wife and Guan Ziyao and said, Ziyao, go to the hospital with your mother now. First, check out the situation, and second, find out what the other side wants. Guan Ziyao subconsciously touched the scratches on her body that hadn't healed yet. Her face was gloomy and she was a little unwilling. Are we going now? But Auntie Lu has such a big problem with me. Last time she even... Mother Guan took her daughter's hand and said, didn't I tell you last time? This is all temporary. Once you give birth to a fat boy for the Lu family, everything will be resolved. Just bear with it for now. No matter what Yen Rui thinks at a time like this, we have to show our stance. You have to make her believe that you didn't do it on purpose. You also feel very guilty. You can't let her think that you deliberately harmed Xiaobao. Obviously, Guan Yu's mother also knew that this was the biggest taboo of the Lu family. She absolutely could not touch it. Otherwise, there would be no chance at all. Guan Rui nodded. Your mother is right. Xiao, go. Don't spoil the great plan if you can't bear it. At this moment, Guan Zhichen rushed out of the house. I'm going too. Has that little mute become an idiot again? I want to see it. Don't be ridiculous. Why are you going? Don't agitate her again. Chapter 17-19. Capital Hospital. When the elevator door opened, Mrs. Guan and Guan Ziyao stepped out and saw a person standing at the end of the corridor, wiping her tears. It was Yen Rui. Sister-in-law. Are you okay? Mother Guan hurriedly greeted him with a face full of concern. Guan Ziyao didn't dare to get too close. She stood behind Mrs. Guan, her pale face full of guilt. Aunt Lu, how is Xiaobao? Yen Rui quickly stopped crying and returned to normal. She looked at the two and said, Xiaobao has woken up. Fortunately, he's not injured. He's just a little frightened. Yen Rui was a completely different person from the shrew from last night. She had returned to being a noble and elegant lady from a wealthy family. Mrs. Guan and Guan Ziyao looked at each other. Were they frightened? As expected, as long as she's fine, it's fine. Guan Ziyao's mother patted her chest in relief. She then pulled Guan Ziyao to apologize again. Sister-in-law, I'm really sorry about this. You and Brother Lu are always right to blame me. Ziyao has been very upset. After she went back, she blamed herself so much that she couldn't eat or drink. She didn't even drink a sip of water. Looking at Guan Ziyao's pale and haggard face, Yen Rui sighed and said, I'm the one who should apologize. I was too impulsive last night. Ziyao, I'm sorry. Does your body still hurt? Seeing Yen Rui's change in attitude, Guan Ziyao's eyes lit up secretly. Aunt, I'm fine. As long as you can forgive me, I'll do anything. I can help take care of Xiaobao. Yen Rui declined politely. I'm very grateful for your kindness, but there's no need. There's already someone taking care of Xiaobao. Hearing Yen Rui's evasive attitude, Mrs. Guan and Guan Ziyao were even more certain that their brother was right. Mrs. Guan comforted Yen Rui. Seeing that Yen Rui's attitude had softened, she took the opportunity to test her. Sister-in-law, as the saying goes, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune. Now that the company is fine and Xiaobao has been rescued, there will definitely be good fortune in the future. However, after so many things have happened, there's still some bad luck. We need some good news to wash it away. What do you think? Yen Rui froze when she heard that. She immediately understood what Mrs. Guan meant. Originally, she was thinking of finding a suitable opportunity to talk about this matter in the future, but since she had already brought it up, she didn't want to drag it on any longer. Thus, Yen Rui thought for a moment, then looked at Mother Guan and said, Sister-in-law, the reason why I don't blame Ziyao is because Ziyao is not related to me in any way. I don't have the right to ask her to do anything for our Xiaobao. Under those circumstances, if Ziyao had done anything, she might have been implicated as well. Thus, I don't blame her. Hearing Yen Rui's words, Mrs. Guan's expression changed and Guan Ziyao frowned. Yen Rui seemed to want to disassociate herself from the matter. Yen Rui looked at them and continued, and Ningxi, it can be said that, this time, she saved Xiaobao's life. She used her own life to exchange for it. As Yen Rui spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. She paused for a moment before she continued, one must have a conscience. If I still misunderstood her at this point and stopped her from getting together with Ting Xiao, wouldn't that be too disappointing? As Mrs. Guan and Guan Ziyao's expressions changed slightly, Yen Rui finally said, so, no matter what happens to this girl and whether she can wake up or not, I'm sure she will be my daughter-in-law. Chapter 1720. Mrs. Guan and Guan Ziyao were stunned by Yen Rui's words. Their faces were filled with disbelief, as if they hadn't expected Yen Rui to say something like that. To be honest, the girl's injuries are too severe. She might not wake up for the rest of her life. Wasn't it stabbing her son in the heart for her to force him to marry another woman? How could she bear to do such a thing? Even if it wasn't for her son, she couldn't do it for Xiaobao. Mrs. Guan had never expected that Yen Rui's attitude would change so drastically because of this incident. It took her a long time to calm down before she said, Sister-in-law, I understand what you're thinking, but you can't let Ting Xiao marry a vegetable just because you feel guilty. You can't make a decision that could harm the child for the rest of his life. Yen Rui smiled bitterly. If I force him to marry someone he doesn't like, I'll be harming him for the rest of his life. Yen Rui looked at Mrs. Guan apologetically and said, Sister-in-law, you know that I've always liked Ziyao. I hope that Ziyao and Ting Xiao could develop feelings for each other, but in the end, I'm also very sorry. Ting Xiao only has eyes for that girl now. Under such circumstances, it would be irresponsible for Ting Xiao to force himself to be with Ziyao. Yen Rui looked at Guan Ziyao and sighed. Ziyao, you're a good girl. It's our family's bad luck. Guan Ziyao's face was even paler than before. She bit her lip and didn't say a word. Yen Rui would rather let Ting Xiao marry a vegetable than marry her? Ningxi was already in such a state, and she still lost to her? Was it because that woman saved Xiaobao? Mrs. Guan was naturally anxious when she heard Yen Rui's words. Sister-in-law, I don't think we can come to a conclusion so easily. How do you know that Xiaobao was saved by that woman? What could she have done as a woman? She'd be lucky if she didn't get in the way. Hearing Mrs. Guan's doubts, Yen Rui's gentle expression turned ugly. Sister-in-law, don't worry. I've investigated this matter thoroughly. Yen Rui laughed at herself in her heart. At this moment she was unhappy that others were doubting Ningxi, but she didn't expect that the person who had always doubted Ningxi was herself. Mrs. Guan couldn't find any other words to refute. She could only frown and say, Sister-in-law, I think you'd better think about this carefully. After all, this was related to the child's lifelong happiness. The child is willful, but you can't be willful with him. Yen Rui smiled. I've been rational my whole life. Occasionally, I want to listen to my heart. Sister-in-law Ziyao, thank you for coming over. I still have to take care of Xiaobao, so I can't accompany you any longer. It was not until Yen Rui asked them to leave that Mrs. Guan reluctantly left the hospital with Guan Ziyao with a black face. After sending off Mother Guan and Guan Ziyao, Yen Rui turned around and saw Lu Chongshan standing not far behind her. Yen Rui was stunned when she saw Lu Chongshan. You heard everything? Lu Chongshan didn't say anything, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. Yen Rui's expression instantly turned cold as she looked at him coldly. What? Are you going to accuse me? Lu Chongshan let out a long sigh as he looked at his wife's rare expression. In your eyes, am I really that unreasonable? Chapter 1721. Rui, you and I are the same. The reason why we didn't believe this girl back then was because of her identity as an actress. We were worried that she would be the same as that woman back then. Everything she did to Xiaobao was just a disguise and an act. Lu Chongshan shook his head and smiled bitterly. I've lived for so long, but I'm still not as smart as Ting Xiao. That kid was right. The one who harmed Xiaobao wasn't anyone else, but me, an old man who used love to protect Xiaobao. I've been living in the shadows of the past. Yen Rui closed her eyes. She was feeling the same way. So, you agree with these two kids? Yen Rui asked. Lu Chongshan fell silent and didn't reply immediately. Yen Rui looked as though she had expected it. I don't care what you think or what concerns you have. This time I just want to stand by my son's side as a mother. Lu Chongshan stared blankly in the direction of the ward with a bitter look on his face. He was the heir, the chairman, and the head of the family. He had always done it for the greater good, for the company, for the entire family, but he had never done it for himself. It was only when he saw Xiaobao dying in front of him in the video that he realized how much he had missed out on. This was his destiny. Even if he was given another chance, he would make the same choice. But he was wrong. He was too conceited, too stubborn, and too trusting of his own judgment. He had already made a mistake once, so he didn't want to make a second time. This time he chose to believe in his son. After some time, Lu Chongshan finally said, "I'm afraid it won't be easy to explain to the Guan family. I'll try my best to come up with a solution. After all, we're in the wrong. If it doesn't work, we'll give them some compensation." After understanding what Lu Chongshan meant, Yen Rui could not help but reveal a surprised expression. She didn't expect that this man, who had been stubborn and domineering his entire life, would bow his head and compromise one day, at the Guan residence. "What did you say?" Guan Rui slammed the table and stood up after hearing his wife's explanation. Guan Zihao, who was sitting on the sofa, looked gloomy. "What do they think the Guan family is? We come and go at their beck and call. Don't forget that they were the ones who begged us. Now that the company is fine, they're burning the bridge after crossing it? How can there be such a good thing?" Mother Guan's face was full of anger. "Isn't that so?" When I heard Yen Rui's words, I almost couldn't help but curse on the spot. What did she mean by that? My daughter can't even compare to a crippled actor lying on a sickbed? The Lu family was such a bully. No matter what, I have to get back a public notice. Old Guan, say something. Guan Rui said coldly, "We naturally can't let this matter go like this, but things haven't come to this, so don't panic. Right now it's just Yen Rui's side of the story. It's inevitable that women are short-sighted and soft-hearted. Besides, her words won't be of much use. This matter still depends on Lu Chongshan's attitude." Guan Ziao frowned. "I think this matter has affected Uncle Lu and Auntie Lu quite a lot. What if Uncle Lu also?" Guan Rui picked up his phone and made a call. "I'll call Lu Chongshan now and ask both families to come out and have a good talk. I would like to personally ask Lu Chongshan what his intentions are." Chapter 1722. At the capital hospital. Lu Tingxiao finally walked out of the ward. Yen Rui looked at her son's haggard face and consoled him. "Tingxiao, don't be too sad. Didn't you say to Xiaobao before? You have to take care of yourself. Medical science is so advanced now. Xiaoxi may have a chance to wake up. As for me and your father, although it's too late now, Mom knows it was our fault. We misunderstood her." Yen Rui was afraid that he didn't believe her, so she continued, "Just now the Guan family came. I've already made it clear to them. Your father's idea is the same. But after all, we've been friends for so many years. Your father and I did so many things behind your back and gave Xiao so much hope. We're sorry. But you don't have to worry about this. Your father and I will handle it and try not to affect the relationship between our families." Lu Chongshan also knew that with that lass's current state, with his son's temperament, he would never accept another woman. Even if time could wash away everything and he was willing to start afresh one day, who knew how long that would take? Although it was a pity that the marriage with the Guan family didn't work out, he couldn't keep delaying it. He had to make things clear. "Even if we can't be in-laws, we can't be enemies?" Lu Chongshan sighed and was about to continue speaking when his phone rang. Lu Chongshan frowned when he saw the caller ID. "It's the Guan family." "Tell them nicely," Yen Rui said hurriedly. Lu Chongshan nodded and said, "Brother Guan." Guan Rui's angry voice came from the other end of the phone. "Brother Lu, I understand that the Lu family is in trouble this time and I sympathize with that girl. But there are many ways to make up to someone. You can't trade the happiness of 2 children for it." When he said 2 children, he was obviously referring to Lu Tingxiao and Guan Ziyao. Lu Chongshan had already expected Guan Rui to call him. He explained helplessly, "Brother Guan, listen to me. Our Lu family has let that girl down. Now that she's in such a state, we can't just turn around and ask Tingxiao to marry someone else. No matter what, our Lu family can't do such an ungrateful thing. Besides, our Tingxiao is a righteous person. As for Ziyao, we don't want to hold her back." Guan Rui didn't expect that even Lu Chongshan would have such an attitude. He couldn't hold back his anger. "Delay Ziyao? But you've already delayed her. Brother Lu, from the start, you told me that Tingxiao was just putting on a show with that woman outside and that it wouldn't affect Ziyao. You were also the one who took the initiative to get Ziyao and Tingxiao together. After returning to the country, so many outstanding men came to our Guan family to ask for our hand in marriage, but we rejected all of them just because of a promise from you. What was the result? Now, you're telling me that you're going to break your promise for a lowly woman. Brother Lu, no matter what, Xiao is still the apple of my eye and I dote on her ever since she was young. Because she really likes Tingxiao and because of the relationship between our two families, I turned a blind eye to the matter between Tingxiao and that woman. I even treated Xiaobao like my own grandson. But what about your Lu family? What do you think Xiao is? An object that comes and goes at your beck and call? Your Lu family has to give us a reasonable explanation for this matter. Chapter 1723. Lu Chongshan knew he was in the wrong, so he said in a low voice, Brother Guan, it's our fault, but it has nothing to do with Tingxiao. It's my fault as his father. I'll bear all the consequences and I'll pay any compensation. Lu Chongshan was interrupted by his son's voice. Let me talk to Chairman Guan, Lu Tingxiao said. Lu Chongshan hesitated for a moment and then handed the phone to his son. Lu Tingxiao took the phone and said coldly, Chairman Guan? Hearing Lu Tingxiao's voice and the way he addressed him, Guan Rui sneered. Tingxiao, you're such a good boy. You don't even want to call me uncle? Lu Tingxiao's expression didn't change at all when he heard Guan Rui's sarcasm. Let's meet in the reception room on the top floor of the capital hospital. I'll give Chairman Guan an explanation. Guan Rui snorted. Ha, you're really sincere. You don't want to give me an explanation in person. Instead, you want me to go to the hospital. Fine, I'll be there. I want to see how the Lu family is going to explain themselves. After hanging up, Yan Rui walked over worriedly. Tingxiao, how are you going to explain yourself to the Guan family? At this moment, Lu Jingli walked out of the ward and put his arm around his mother's shoulder. Hey Mom, why are you worrying about this? You have two such handsome and intelligent sons. Do you still need to worry about them? Just wait for the good show. Yan Rui glared at him and said worriedly, What good show? Don't mess around. When did I mess around? Even if you don't trust me, don't you trust my brother? You don't have to do anything anyway. You just need to be here. Lu Jingli said confidently. Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan looked at each other. They didn't know what they were going to do. However, they were relieved to see that Tingxiao wasn't dispirited and would even take the initiative to deal with the matter. Xiaobao stayed in the ward to accompany Ningxi, and Annie looked after her. Lu Chongshan, Yan Rui, Lu Tingxiao, and Lu Jingli were preparing for the meeting with the Guan family. Half an hour later, the people from the Guan family arrived. Uncle Lu, Auntie Lu Jingli. Guan Xiao greeted them one by one before she looked at the man she had not seen for a long time. Tingxiao. Mrs. Guan was displeased with Lu Tingxiao's cold reaction. That's enough, Xiao. So what if you treat him well? Some people are still bewitched by women outside. With a little trick, they won't be able to tell north from south. As soon as Mrs. Guan finished speaking, she felt that the aura around the arrogant and distant man suddenly changed. Although it was not obvious, the invisible pressure wrapped around her like a suffocating force. Mother Guan coughed gently and said in a serious tone, Tingxiao, it's not that I want to criticize you, but I'm getting on in years and I've seen a lot. So, I see things more clearly than you do. Look at the woman you've fallen for, then look at our Xiao. Our Xiao is a lady from a respectable family. No matter if it's her character or talent, she's the most innocent and kind. Your father and mother watched her grow up so they know her best. Putting aside Mrs. Guan's judgment of Ningxi, Yan Rui and Lu Chongshan were undoubtedly impressed and satisfied with Guan Xiao. At this moment they couldn't help but look guilty. Chapter 1724. When Guan Rui saw the guilty look on Lu Chongshan and Yan Rui's faces, he quickly added, That woman saved Xiaobao by accident, so it's understandable that you want to make it up to her. I told you on the phone that there are many ways to make it up to her, but to let Tingxiao marry a woman like that, I don't mean that she's in a vegetative state, but that she has a terrible reputation to begin with. That video from before was all over the internet and had a terrible impact. How could the eldest daughter-in-law of the Lu family be this kind of woman? Yan Rui furrowed her brows. I know a little about what happened that time. It was later clarified that the woman was framed and the woman in the photo was a female celebrity who had plastic surgery to look like her. At this moment, Guan Zihao spoke up. Auntie Lu, a fly doesn't bite a seamless egg. There must be something wrong with that woman. You may not pay attention to the entertainment industry, but this woman has a terrible reputation in the industry and online. She's always involved in scandals and has haters everywhere. Men of our stature can flirt with a woman like that, but they will never marry her. You must know that marrying a woman like that will cause people to gossip about you, and it may even affect the company's stocks. Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui looked solemn. Although Guan Ziheo's words were harsh, they were the truth. But this time, Ningxi had saved Xiaobao, so they were prepared to bear the consequences. Mrs. Guan was pleased with Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan's reactions, so she continued with a smug look on her face. Our Xiao likes Ting Xiao and respects him, so she doesn't mind that he has an illegitimate child. In fact, she has put in a lot of effort for this child. Did you think she studied psychology or children's education because she was interested? It's all because of Xiaobao. But Ting Xiao had trampled all over her feelings and used a lowly actress to humiliate her. How can he face Xiao and the relationship between our two families by doing this? Now, even sister-in-law and brother Lu are hurting our hearts. Mother Guan was still talking non-stop, saying that she was wronged and that she had been betrayed. Lu Jingli, who was at the side, was bored to death and picked his ears, his face full of ridicule. Lu Tingxiao didn't interrupt the Guan family from the beginning to the end. Until now, he said expressionlessly, "Are you done?" Guan Rui snorted coldly, looking very displeased. "What? Did we say a single word wrong? Now that all of us are here, what about your so-called explanation?" Lu Tingxiao dialed a number and simply said 2 words on the other end of the line. "Come in." In the next second, 2 cold-looking bodyguards in black threw a man in like a sack. The people of the Guan family had seen him when they came to the Lu family's house, so they all recognized him. He was the chef of the Lu family. "Old master, old madam, young master. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I was blinded by lard." The chef was crying with snot and tears all over his face. He knelt in front of Lu Tingxiao and said, "Young master, please let me off. Please let me off this time, seeing that young master didn't suffer too much, please let me off this time. The other party asked me to double the dosage, but I didn't dare to. I only smeared a little on the lunch box. I really didn't want to hurt young master." Chapter 1725. Judging from the chef's words, he was talking about Xiaobao's food poisoning. Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan's expressions changed. They had thought that Ningxi was the culprit, but they didn't expect that the culprit was them. It wasn't that someone had spiked the food, but that the chef had done something to Xiaobao's lunch box. Guan Rui took a sip of tea unhurriedly and said, "So it was the chef who poisoned Xiaobao last time?" Guan Ziheo narrowed his eyes. "Now we're talking about our families. Why did you bring him here?" Lu Jingli smiled. "Young Master Guan, why are you in such a hurry? Take your time." Yen Rui looked at the chef and trembled with anger. "Master Qin, you've worked for our Lu family for more than 10 years and we've treated you well. Who on earth gave you so many benefits? How could you do such a cruel and unscrupulous thing? You know that Xiaobao is my life." "Madam, I'm sorry, Master. I was possessed. It was that Ningxi slept with me for one night, gave me a lot of money and coaxed me into doing these things. She said that no one would find out that I was the culprit. I couldn't resist the temptation, so I took the risk and did it." "What did you say?" Yen Rui's expression changed. Lu Chongshan's expression also froze, but he didn't react much. He just sat there quietly. Since Ting Xiao had asked Master Qin to come here, it must not be that simple. "Old madam, old master and eldest young master, my words are absolutely true. I dare not lie to you. It was that Ningxi who asked me to do this. If I'm lying, I'll be struck by lightning. I won't lie even if I'm 100 times more courageous." Master Qin vowed. Mrs. Guan shook her head sarcastically. Not only did she harm a child to achieve her goal, she even slept with a chef. Just then the door opened again. A woman walked in. "Is it her?" Lu Tingxiao asked. The chef stared at the man at the door and nodded. "It's her. The superstar Ningxi." Seeing the woman at the door, Yen Rui and Lu Chongshan were surprised. "Ningxi? How could it be?" Ningxi was still lying unconscious on the bed at this moment. Then this woman was, Yen Rui recalled. Is this woman Su Yimo who had plastic surgery to look like Ningxi?" "That's right, it's her." Lu Jingli nodded. Yen Rui patted her chest. "No wonder I thought there was something wrong with this woman's eyes. Mom, you have sharp eyes." Lu Jingli complimented. "Don't talk nonsense. So, Suyimo is the one behind the chef? Yenrui asked. At this moment, Guan Zihao said faintly, that might not be the case. In any case, these two people looked exactly the same. Who could tell who was who? Who knows if Boss Lu deliberately framed this woman in order to clear Ningxi's name? Mother Guan also chimed in, you called us over and instead of talking about proper business, you want us to see all these messy things. What is the meaning of this? Lu Tingxiao glanced at Lu Jingli. Lu Jingli picked up his phone and played a recording. The following recording might not be suitable for children, but thankfully, none of us are underage. Chapter 1726. The moment Lu Jingli turned on the recording, the room was filled with the sound of a man and a woman's heavy breathing and bodies colliding. Even though they could only hear their voices, everyone present was an adult. They could immediately tell what the two of them were doing. Damn you, why are you playing this? Yenrui glared at Lu Jingli. At first, Guan Zihao thought it was a farce, but after a while, his expression suddenly changed. He looked at Suyimo in disbelief. Just as Yenrui was about to stop Lu Jingli, a familiar voice came from the phone. Tisk, so absent-minded. What? You can't deal with me now that you've hooked up with Lu Tingxiao? Make it clear you're just a fake. Do you really think you can replace the real one? Apart from your face, you don't even deserve to carry Ningxi's shoes. I've already done what you asked me to do. In order to frame Ningxi, I slept with so many people, even a disgusting chef. Why won't you let me go? I don't want to work for you anymore. Yo? Lu Tingxiao treated you nicely and didn't kill you this time. Do you really want to use your face to climb up the ladder? Can't wait to kick me away? Let me tell you. You can't. I spent so much money to make you look like this. Do you want to run away so easily? Lu Tingxiao has already found out about my existence. Everyone knows that I got plastic surgery to look like Ningxi. I've already been exposed. I can't do anything for you anymore. And you better not come looking for me again. If Lu Tingxiao finds out, don't blame me for not warning you. The sound of a man and a woman panting could be heard again, but it was enough. The voice in the recording was Guan Zihao. The room was dead silent. Obviously, such a private recording could only be recorded by the person involved. Bitch, how dare you? Guan Zihao glared at Suyimo and blurted out. Then he suddenly shut his mouth, realizing that he had been exposed. Lu Chongshan and Yenrui had never thought that everything from Ningxi being framed to Xiaobao being poisoned was actually done by Guan Zihao. The two of them stared at the young man in front of them, who was a member of the Guan family, in a daze for a long time. Guan Ziyao twisted her fingers in panic and looked at her brother in disbelief. She had repeatedly urged him to do this well, and this was what he did? To Suyimo's bed? He even left behind such a huge weakness. Was it because Suyimo had a pretty face? Even her own brother could not resist the temptation. For a moment, Guan Ziyao's face was extremely gloomy. It's over. Everything is over. Lu Jingli raised his eyebrows. Young Master Guan, do you have anything else to say? Lu Chongshan's fingers trembled. Zihao. You actually... Without waiting for Lu Chongshan to speak, Guan Rue suddenly pushed his chair away, stood up, and slapped Guan Zihao's face. Bastard. How could you do such a thing? After Guan Rue slapped Guan Zihao, he immediately turned to Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui and said, Brother Lu, sister-in-law, his mother and I didn't know anything about this, and Ziyao didn't know anything. I didn't expect him to do such a thing behind our backs. Zihao is still young and impetuous. He saw that Ziyao was wronged and was so angry that he did such a thing and even hurt Xiaobao. That's definitely not his intention. Chapter 1727. Lu Jingli was amused. You specifically told me to double the dosage. Wasn't that your intention? Lu Tingxiao didn't say anything but stood up and left for Ningxi's ward. He didn't want to waste any time on other things. Lu Jingli picked up his cell phone with a smile and clicked on another recording. Stop acting. I think you can compete for the Oscars. It was Mrs. Guan's voice in this recording. Damn it. Yen Rui is a daughter of a rich family. She is not a lady. She is a shrew. Look at how badly she beat our Ziyao. She is so cruel. Forget it. Her only precious grandson is dead. It's normal for her to be a little crazy. Then it was Guan Rue's voice. Hearing this, Mrs. Guan and Guan Rue's faces turned pale. What frightened them even more was the words that came after that. Silly girl, she is just sad because she lost her grandson. She wants you to give her another one. That's why I said Lu Tingxiao's illegitimate son can't be kept. The Lu family values this child too much. If we leave the family property to him, we will suffer a great loss by marrying the Lu family. Even if he doesn't die this time, we will find a way to get rid of him in the future. Mother is right. Don't worry. Let's go back and celebrate tonight. Tomorrow we will hear the good news about the little bastard. Yan Rui simply couldn't believe that the family that she had always treated as family had such sinister intentions. The entire family was so malicious. Guan Rui. I have been treating you as a good brother for so many years, but you? Lu Chongshan covered his chest and couldn't even say a word. Fortunately they were in the hospital and Lu Tingxiao seemed to be prepared. Immediately, a doctor came in and did emergency treatment to stabilize Lu Chongshan's condition. He had always regarded Xiaobao as his good brother and best friend. He had always thought that Xiaobao was a good daughter-in-law. He had always stubbornly believed that the Guan family was very close to each other. Most importantly, they would never hurt Xiaobao. Just now they had said how much they loved Xiaobao and treated him as their own grandson. But what about in private? Even before marrying into the family, he was already thinking of ways to kill Xiaobao and seize the family property. Yan Rui even thought to herself in shock, was Guan Ziao really in a daze at that time, or was it intentional? This thought made her hair stand on end. The facts proved that they were wrong, gravely wrong. The ones who were truly unable to read people well were them, and the ones who almost caused little Bao's death were also them. They were simply pushing Xiaobao into a fire pit. They had been feeling guilty because of the failure of this marriage, thinking about how to make up for it, but the other party was thinking about how to celebrate when their family was in trouble. Guan Rui's eyes were filled with malice when he saw that everything had been exposed, and he said coldly, "Brother Lu, don't blame me. You can only blame your son for being blind. He gave up such an outstanding daughter like me and just had to fancy a lowly actress. Ask yourself honestly, how perfect would it be if our two families united by marriage? As for Xiaobao, as long as you make Ziyao's child the heir, we naturally won't make things difficult for a child. It's not too late to regret it now." You shut up. Lu Chongshan was panting angrily when Xing Wu's panicked voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Master, madam, second young master. Go out and have a look. Bad news. Bad news." A lot of people in army uniforms suddenly came and said they wanted to take Miss Xiaoxi away. Chapter 1729. At the end of the corridor, a spirited old man with white hair walked over with the help of Zhuang Liaoyuan. On the other side of the old man stood a tall and slender boy, who was glaring at the people of the Lu family with a pair of eyes as bright as the sun. Seeing that not only Zhuang Liaoyuan but also the old commander Zhuang Zongren came, Lu Chongshan had to restrain his cold expression. "Commander Zhuang, why did you come in person?" At this moment, the people of the Guan family who were hiding in the corner all froze when they heard Zhuang Zongren call Ning Shuiyan's granddaughter. "Granddaughter? What granddaughter? Mingxi is Zhuang Zongren's granddaughter?" Mrs. Guan murmured in disbelief. Guan Ziao turned pale. "That's impossible. How could Ningxi be Zhuang Zongren's granddaughter?" Suddenly she thought of something and suddenly stopped talking. She looked at her father stiffly. "Dad, according to the information you found, what's the name of Ningxi's mother? Is it his surname?" Guan Rui's face darkened. "Yes, her surname is Zhuang Lingyu." Guan Zihao opened his mouth and it took him a long time to come to his senses. Ning Yaohua's wife is the daughter of the Zhuang family? How is that possible? I've never heard of it. Guan Rui pinched between his eyebrows. "After all, we haven't been in the capital for many years and we don't know a lot of information. Besides, I didn't investigate further after I found out that Ningxi's biological father was Ning Yaohua, so there might be some omissions. I'm afraid Zhuang Lingyu's identity is not simple. After all, General Zhuang Zongren had come to say that Ningxi was his granddaughter. It couldn't be false." Hearing her father's words, Guan Ziyao was stunned and a trace of despair flashed across her eyes. She stood there stiffly and stared at the scene in front of her. It was impossible, it was impossible. She still had a glimmer of hope. Ningxi had become a vegetable. No matter how guilty the Lu family was, no matter how much Lu Tingxiao liked this woman, he wouldn't wait for her forever. Besides, the illegitimate son had failed this time and might make a comeback at any time. The Lu family was still in danger, so the Guan family still had a chance to make a comeback. She thought that one day he would realize that she was the most suitable person for him. One day the Lu family would also realize the truth and choose benefits. But she never expected that Ningxi's grandfather was Zhuang Zhongren. What kind of family was the Zhuang clan? Their clan had been involved in politics for generations, and they were the #1 clan in the imperial city. They were not something they could compare to. In terms of background and history, even the Lu clan would have to bow down to the Zhuang clan. If I hadn't come here, my granddaughter would have been killed. In the face of Zhuang Zhongren's rebuke, Lu Chongshan didn't dare to say no. He knew he was in the wrong, so he softened his voice and explained, "General Zhuang, Miss Ning was seriously injured for the sake of the Lu family. She was injured to save Xiaobao. The entire Lu family is very grateful to Miss Ning. Now we have invited the top experts to treat her and try our best to save her. Anyway, the Lu family will definitely take responsibility for this matter. Please rest assured." Before Zhuang Zhongren could speak, Zhuang Rongguang couldn't help cursing. Chapter 1730. The teenager's eyes were full of anger and his chest was heaving violently with anger. "Nonsense. My cousin has been harmed by your Lu family's people. How dare you take advantage of her? Do you really think that my cousin has no one to back her up? Let me tell you, we must take my cousin away today. Otherwise, if she continues to stay here, who knows what will happen to her. Your Lu family is not a good person." Zhuang Rongguang took the opportunity to sneak home today when the army went out to buy things. He didn't expect to hear the conversation between his father and grandfather, and then he learned that Sister Shi had been hurt. What was more surprising was that Sister Shi was really his sister, his cousin. Damn. He knew it. Why was Sister Shi so awesome? It turned out that she was a member of the Zhuang family. So he decisively followed his father and grandfather to the hospital to pick up Sister Shi. Now his sister and mother were still waiting for their news at home. This time he must save Sister Shi. His father and grandfather were too proud to say something, so he just scolded them. Anyway, he was a playboy. If it weren't for Brother Shi, he would still be fighting and picking up girls. After hearing his son's angry scolding, Zhuang Liaoyuan just gave him a warning look, but there was no blame in his eyes. Obviously, he was also extremely dissatisfied with the Lu family. Lu Chongshan's face darkened under the scolding, but he could only bear it and continued to say humbly, "I misunderstood Miss Ning in the past. It was really my fault. Here I solemnly apologize. Miss Ning saved our Xiaobao this time and is a great benefactor of our Lu family. I will do everything I can to make it up to her. How can I hurt her? Old Leader Zhuang and Major General Zhuang, please believe that we are really sincere in making it up to her. You may know a person's face, but you don't know his heart," Zhuang Rongguang said grumpily. At this time Zhuang Liaoyuan, who had been silent, said, "Chairman Lu, there's no need to make it up to her. Cici is kind by nature and I believe that she is willing to save people. It has nothing to do with anyone and we don't need to make it up to her. Now, as Cici's family, we just want to take her away instead of asking outsiders to take care of her. I believe Chairman Lu won't mind this request, will you?" Zhuang Liaoyuan's words were flawless, blocking all of Lu Chongshan's excuses with a single sentence. She didn't need your compensation now, and as Ningxi's family, it was no problem for her to take Ningxi away. Therefore Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui looked at each other and were suddenly in a dilemma. Judging from the Zhuang family's attitude, once they took Ningxi away, they would never allow the Lu family to have any contact with Ningxi. His son was dead set on this girl and Xiaobao couldn't leave her even for a moment. What if they really took Ningxi away? Who is it? How sneaky. Come out. Zhuang Rongguang's gaze sharpened. He suddenly leaped behind them and pulled one of them out of the reception room. "Ah, it hurts, let go. Let go." Guan Zihao screamed in pain. His parents and Guan Ziao also ran out and snatched him from Zhuang Rongguang's hands. Lu Chongshan's face turned even uglier when he saw that the people from the Guan clan had not left and had been discovered by the Zhuang clan. The Zhuang family was already dissatisfied with them, and now they might misunderstand. Sure enough, Zhuang Liaoyuan glanced at those people and his eyes became colder. "Cici is in a coma now and her life is uncertain, but you still brought these people to her. How sincere you are." Chapter 1731. Zhuang Rongguang twisted Guan Zihao and kicked him to the ground. He was so angry that he was about to explode. What are you thanking me for? What sincerity? It's all bullshit. My cousin isn't dead yet. You're already looking for someone else for your son. Are we going to bow to the heaven and earth in front of her ward to get married? Ah, Guan Zihao's wrist was almost broken. He screamed in pain. No. It's none of our business. The Lu family went back on their word and called us over to call off the engagement. What? Break off the engagement? Not only the Zhuang family but Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui were also stunned. Guan Rui deliberately glanced at the Zhuang family and looked disappointed. He said sarcastically, I was wondering why Brother Lu was so heartless all of a sudden. So that's why. Mrs. Guan took the opportunity to shout shrilly, Lu Chongshan, I say, you were so serious about it, why did you suddenly want to break off the engagement with our family? You've climbed up the social ladder. You're the granddaughter of the Zhuang family in the capital. Of course a small family like ours can't compare to you. Lu Chongshan, you're really scheming. Seeing the Guan family talking nonsense and Guan Ziyao standing there with an aggrieved expression, as if the Lu family had really betrayed her, Lu Chongshan was so angry that he almost had a relapse again. At this moment he had seen through the Guan family's true colors. Yen Rui immediately stood up and slapped Mrs. Guan's face. This slap is for my Xiaobao. As soon as she finished speaking, she slapped her again. This slap is for Xiaoxi. Chongshan and I have always treated the Guan family as friends and trusted your family's character and upbringing. We even tried to matchmake Tingxiao with your daughter despite the fact that Tingxiao already had someone he liked. But you guys, it wasn't until today until Tingxiao took out the evidence and exposed everything. Only then did I realize that the people Chongshan and I trusted all these years and treated as family were actually a family of jackals and wolves. You claim that you're innocent and kind, but you've done all kinds of dirty things behind my back. You've framed Xiaoxi, hurt Xiaobao, and you've already planned how to seize the Lu family's property before marrying me. Now you're slandering me for having an engagement with the Guan family? Back then, when the Lu family was in trouble, I did hope that the two families could unite through marriage as soon as possible. Not only did I hide it from Tingxiao, I even tried to find a girl for him. I even paid a few visits to the Lu family's residence to ask for their opinion. But what was your attitude? Seeing that the Lu family situation wasn't looking good, they kept pushing all sorts of excuses. Now that the company's problems have been solved and Xiaoxi almost sacrificed her life to save Xiaobao, you want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Do you really think that the entire Lu family is a fool? Let me tell you. Not to mention that girl is unconscious right now. Even if she never wakes up, I, Yen Rui, will only recognize her as my daughter-in-law. Yen Rui's words echoed in the hallway. For a long time, Lu Jingli was flabbergasted and simply gasped in amazement. Fuck. His mother's combat power was off the charts today. After all, his mother cared about her image the most. She was gentle and she rarely spoke loudly. But now she was so powerful. Sure enough, the saying was true. Women are weak, but mothers are strong. Do you want me to show you the dirty evidence in front of Chief Zhuang and old General Zhuang? Yen Rui scolded coldly and then looked at her youngest son. Jingli. Chapter 1732. Receiving the order, Lu Jingli immediately clicked on the recording. As soon as the recording rang, the Guan family people's faces changed. Before the Zhuang family people could react, they hurriedly snatched Guan Zihao from Zhuang Rongguang's hands and ran away without saying a word. Zhuang Rongguang was furious when he heard the recording. These bastards. They were the masterminds behind the case of Sister Shi being framed, which had caused a huge uproar some time ago. Zhuang Rongguang was about to chase them, but then remembered that he had more important things to do today, so he held back. Forget it, there was no hurry. These people would have plenty of time to deal with them later. Humph, now you know what's good for you. What were you doing before? Zhuang Rongguang muttered and snorted. I think among the Lu family people, only the guy my sister fell in love with has better eyesight. Lu Jingli hurriedly raised his eyebrows and pointed at himself. This guy has better eyesight. I've always supported my brother and sister-in-law. Please call me the second godly assistant. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, Zhuang Liaoyuan looked a little relieved. As for what the Guan family said about the Lu family, Zhuang Liaoyuan knew it was impossible. Because his father still couldn't let go of Ling Yu's affair, he only took care of Cici in private but didn't officially acknowledge her as his child. And because of his prejudice against Lu Tingxiao, he didn't want Cici to be with that boy. So even though he knew the situation of the Liu family and that Cece was facing a difficult situation, he didn't show up and hoped that she would retreat, which led to this result. For this matter, they also had a lot of responsibility. Cece had helped them so many times, but they couldn't do anything for her. After the Guan family people fled, Yan Rui walked up to Zhuang Liaoyuan and Zhuang Zhongren and said sincerely, "Old Chief Zhuang, Major General Zhuang, it's all our fault as parents. We didn't know the right person and kept misunderstanding Cece. We tried to stop Ting Xiao from being with that girl again and again. But our Ting Xiao is absolutely sincere to Cece. No matter how hard we tried to persuade him, his love for Xiaoxi never wavered. Whether it was the previous blind date or the marriage proposal with the Guan family, it was decided by his father and me against his will." Lu Chongshan closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. "Back then I strongly opposed them being together. I told Ting Xiao that as the leader of the company and the head of the family, choosing a wife wasn't something he could decide alone. At that time, Ting Xiao told me that apart from his mother and I, no one else could influence his decision." Hearing this, Zhuang Liaoyuan's eyes changed, and Zhuang Zhongren also pondered, looking a bit emotional. In fact, after calming down and thinking about it, she remembered that Lu Tingxiao and the others had met him several times and had even come to their home for dinner. At that time, from the way he got along with Xiaoxi, she could tell that the child was indeed sincere to Xiaoxi. Zhuang Liaoyuan's prejudice against him mainly stemmed from the grievances his family had caused Xiaoxi. As Lu Chongshan said this, his eyes turned red and his voice trembled. Ting Xiao is a very filial child. He has been looking for a way to satisfy both sides. In fact, his mother and I had been swayed by him and were ready to let nature take its course, but we didn't expect that the Lu family would be in such turmoil. Just 7 days ago, Ting Xiao told me that he could solve all this and made an appointment with me in 7 days, but I didn't believe him. It's my fault. Chapter 1733. Zhuang Liaoyuan pondered for a moment, exchanged a look with his father next to him, and then considered his words and said, "We don't want to interfere in the affairs of your Lu family. The point is, things have become like this. No matter what we say, Cece won't wake up. Now we just want to take her back. Lin Qian, go pick up Mississippi." Before Lu Chongshan and Yan Rui could speak, Zhuang Liaoyuan had already raised his men and ordered them to take her away today. Yes. After the young officer received the order, he immediately led a team of people, including professional medical personnel who were already prepared, and walked straight to the door of the ward. The doctors and nurses on the side were intimidated by the hostility of these soldiers. They all cowered to the side and no one dared to step forward to stop them. The young officer named Lin Qian strode to the door of the ward and was about to push it open. Suddenly the door of the ward was pulled open from the inside. A tall, cold-faced man in a black suit stood at the door. Glancing around, the powerful aura of a man who had been in a superior position for a long time and the murderous aura that could only be acquired by fighting on thousands of battlefields suddenly burst out. Out of his sharp intuition for danger, Lin Qian immediately touched the weapon at his waist vigilantly and stopped, not daring to go forward. Seeing Lu Tingxiao appear, Zhuang Liaoyuan's aura also suddenly became cold. The two men standing opposite each other, their auras were equally strong. For a moment the atmosphere was extremely tense. Zhuang Liaoyuan's thin lips tightened into a straight line and said in an extremely cold voice, "Lu Tingxiao, I didn't agree to let you be together before, because I know very well that Cece is too naive and your family is not suitable for her. And it turns out that all of this has come true. This kind of situation has happened once and it may happen again. I just hate that I didn't stop it in time and let this happen. I just watched her become like this. So, I'm sorry, but today I have to take her away. Whether Cece is good or bad in the future, it has nothing to do with your Lu family." Zhuang Rongguang nodded repeatedly and echoed, "Yes. I've long felt that you're not worthy of my cousin. My cousin is so beautiful and good she could marry anyone. Why would she marry someone like you who has a burden on her? Now, in order to save your son, my cousin almost lost her life. Isn't that enough?" Zhuang Zhongren stood at the side without saying a word, but he obviously agreed with Zhuang Liaoyuan's words. Obviously, he had made up his mind to keep his granddaughter away from the Lu family. Lu Tingxiao did not reply to Zhuang Liaoyuan and Zhuang Rongguang. Instead, he looked at Zhuang Zhongren and asked, "Old Chief Zhuang, may I have a word with you?" Zhuang Rongguang panicked. "What do you mean borrow? What else was there to say? You should just take your son and find some rich young lady to be his stepmother. Don't harm my cousin anymore. Zhuang Zongren looked at the young man in front of him with a cold expression, but the young man's eyes did not waver in the slightest. After a while Zhuang Zongren said, "Okay. Grandpa." Zhuang Zongren raised his hand to silence his grandson. Then he followed Lu Tingxiao to the end of the corridor not far away to speak in private. Zhuang Rongguang paced back and forth anxiously. "Dad, why didn't you stop him just now? What if that fellow's glib tongue bewitches grandfather?" Zhuang Liaoyuan squinted at his son. "Is your grandfather that easy to bewitch?" Zhuang Rongguang scratched his head. "That's true." Chapter 1734. Zhuang Rongguang snorted and secretly rubbed his palms. "Grandpa, don't be polite. Beat him to death." Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui looked at each other and felt uneasy. The Zhuang family was so determined. Could Tingxiao really persuade the old leader? What if he failed? What about Xiaobao, at the end of the corridor? Zhuang Zongren looked cold and determined. "What do you want to say? Say it now. But I want to make it clear in advance that no matter what you say, I will take Xi away today. Because of my hesitation, I had already made a mistake once, so I absolutely couldn't let Xi be hurt again." Rongguang's words were harsh but reasonable. "She doesn't need you to make it up to her, nor does she need your meaningless guilt. You can take the child and start over, but she..." Lu Tingxiao said, "Xiaobao is Ningxi's and my biological child?" Zhuang Zongren's words were stuck in his throat. He stared at the young man in front of him in astonishment. What did you just say?" "Xiaobao is Ningxi's and my biological child," Lu Tingxiao repeated. Even though Zhuang Zongren had been through a lot, it took him a long time to react. You mean Xiaobao is Xi's biological child?" "Yes. Xiaobao is Ningxi's biological son and your great-grandson," Lu Tingxiao answered. Ningxi Zhuang Kuder and Zhuang Rongguang of the Zhuang family were mostly unmarried. Those who were married were busy with their careers and did not have children. Therefore Zhuang Zongren did not have any grandchildren of the same generation. He had always been very regretful about this. He wondered if he could hold the fourth generation of the Zhuang family before he died. But now Lu Tingxiao suddenly told him that he had a great-grandson. How could he not be shocked? Apart from shock, he couldn't suppress his excitement. "Brat from the Lu family, are you serious? You're not lying to me?" Zhuang Zongren asked seriously. Lu Tingxiao's face didn't change at all. "I've done a paternity test for Xiaobao and Ningxi in the capital military hospital. If you don't believe me, you can ask Dr. Zheng in the capital military hospital. You have a good relationship with him. I think you must believe his words. Even if there is no paternity test based on your judgment, don't you think Xiaobao is a member of the Zhuang family?" The old commander said without thinking, "This child is so good at shooting and is even more talented than Rongguang. What's so strange about him?" After Zhuang Zongren finished speaking, he realized that he seemed to have fallen into Lu Tingxiao's trap, but he couldn't care about this. He repeatedly recalled the brief contact he had with Xiaobao, and the more he thought about it, the more shocked he was. Similar, very similar. No wonder I felt that Xiaobao and little Xi were too similar at that time. Lu Tingxiao frowned and nodded. "Yes, Xiaoxi doesn't know yet. This matter is very complicated. On the one hand, it's because of my selfishness. On the other hand, there are too many doubts about what happened that year. I dare not act rashly in case I alert the enemy." Lu Tingxiao frowned and nodded. "Yes, Xiaoxi doesn't know yet. This matter is very complicated. On the one hand, it's because of my selfishness. On the other hand, there are too many doubts about what happened back then. I don't dare to act rashly so as not to alert the enemy. This is not the place to talk. I will explain the situation to you in detail later. However, before I find out everything, I hope you can keep this matter a secret for the time being." Zhuang Zongren nodded solemnly. "I know what I'm doing." After that he asked anxiously, "Where is Xiaobao now?" Chapter 1735. Xiaobao is accompanying Cici in the ward. Lu Tingxiao answered and then continued, "This incident caused a great shock to the child. Because he was too guilty and couldn't face the fact that Cici died to save him, Xiaobao couldn't hear anyone after he woke up. He didn't eat or drink or say a word." Zhuang Zongren's face tightened. "How could this be? How is the child now?" "Later, I told him that Xiaoxi was in a coma and Mom needed him, so he slowly recovered and stayed by her side all the time. Xiaobao can't leave Mom now, and I believe that Xiaobao is the most likely person to wake Cici up." Zhuang Zongren, who was just scowling at Lu Tingxiao, nodded repeatedly. Yes, you're right. Xiaobao and Cici can't be separated at this time. Zhuang Zhongren looked at Lu Tingxiao and asked, "What do you think?" Lu Tingxiao paused and then made a suggestion. "Elder Zhuang, with your connections, you can get better medical conditions than me, so I agree with you taking Cici away." Hearing Lu Tingxiao's words, Zhuang Zhongren realized that he didn't want Ningxi to stay like their parents. Immediately, the last bit of anger in his heart disappeared, and he showed a satisfied look. "At least you know what's good for you. But Xiaobao and Cici can't be separated, so why don't you let Xiaobao go with you?" Zhuang Zhongren couldn't have asked more. "Let Xiaobao go with me? That would be great. But can you make the decision?" Lu Tingxiao nodded. "My parents will agree. You can rest assured." Zhuang Zhongren immediately made the decision. Well, it's settled then. Not far away, Zhuang Rongguang was a little anxious when he saw his grandfather talking with them for so long. With their backs to them, they couldn't hear their voices or see their expressions, so they didn't know what they were talking about for so long. He was thinking about whether to sneak over and eavesdrop when the two people at the end of the corridor finally came back. Grandpa, you're back. You didn't hear this guy's sweet talk, did you?" Zhuang Rongguang hurriedly greeted him with an expectant look. Zhuang Zhongren glared at his grandson. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Zhuang Rongguang massaged his shoulders fawningly. "I knew you wouldn't. Can we take cousin away now?" Zhuang Zhongren nodded. "Yes, of course we have to take them away." Zhuang Rongguang was overjoyed, but Lu Chongshan and Yen Rui were anxious. Lin Qian. Just as Zhuang Liaoyuan was about to order his men to go in and bring them back, Zhuang Zhongren interrupted him discontentedly. "Wait, don't move. Everyone retreat. There are so many of you. What if you scare them? I'll go myself." Zhuang Liaoyuan frowned while Zhuang Rongguang was confused. "Scared? Sister, she is unconscious. Who was he trying to scare?" Since Zhuang Zhongren personally went over, no one dared to stop him. Then everyone saw Zhuang Zhongren walking towards Ningxi's ward with a cold expression. After entering the ward, they saw a soft little guy lying in front of Ningxi's bed. He put his little hand in his mother's palm and stared at her without blinking, as if he was afraid that she would disappear. It was as if he and his mother were the only things in the world. Zhuang Zhongren was moved. His eyes were slightly wet, and he tried to speak softly, as if he was afraid of disturbing the little guy. "Xiaobao. Xiaobao, come, cough cough, to Grandpa Zhuang." Chapter 1736. The little fellow seemed to have sensed that there was an intruder. His expression of attachment to his mother suddenly changed. His soft and adorable little face froze into ice, and his sharp gaze swept over the other people in the ward. He was like a little beast that had suddenly revealed its claws. Although he was young, his aura was not weak at all. Click, click. Suddenly, there was a strange sound similar to metal rubbing against each other. A row of robots suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the suite. Their mechanical bodies glowed with a cold light, and the black ports on their iron arms were uniformly aimed at the intruders. "Oh my God! When did Xiaobao get these things?" Lu Jingli was so scared that he almost covered his head and scurried away. He hurriedly looked for something to cover himself in case he was accidentally injured by the stench. The Zhuang family and the military officers outside the door were all surprised to see those neat and uniform robots that were obviously controlled by someone. Zhuang Rongguang's eyes almost popped out. "So cool. These robots can't be controlled by this little brat, right?" Looking closely, there was indeed a black thing that looked like a controller in Xiaobao's palm. "Little brat. Who are you calling a little brat?" Zhuang Zhongren slapped Zhuang Rongguang's head hard as soon as he finished speaking. Zhuang Rongguang immediately hugged his head in a daze. "Grandpa, why did you hit me?" Zhuang Zhongren glared at him, then looked at the little fellow who was guarding Ningxi with admiration. His tone became even more gentle and loving. "Xiaobao, don't be nervous, don't be afraid. We won't hurt her. We're here to help her." Xiaobao's expression didn't change at all. His face was full of vigilance as he used his small body to shield Ningxi. The robots were still in standby mode. Zhuang Zhongren revealed a helpless expression. At this moment, Lu Tingxiao walked past the robots and walked in front of Xiaobao. He squatted down and said to Xiaobao, "Do you want mommy to get better soon?" The little fellow's attention was immediately attracted by this sentence and he looked at Lu Tingxiao. Thus Lu Tingxiao continued, "You've met this Grandpa Zhuang before. Mommy was also there at that time. Do you remember?" Hearing his mother, Xiaobao thought seriously for a moment and then nodded. Seeing that the little fellow still remembered him, Zhuang Zhongren immediately had a gratified expression. Grandpa Zhuang is Mom's friend. He can send Mom to a better hospital, Lu Tingxiao said. When the little fellow heard this, although she relaxed a little, she still had no intention of giving way. Can you accompany me and go with Grandpa Zhuang? Only when Lu Tingxiao said this did Xiaobao completely relax, and then he nodded. At the same time, the robots blocking in front of the bed also retracted the weapons on their arms, divided into 2 rows and retreated, opening a path. Seeing this, Lu Jingli patted his chest and walked out from behind the door. He was a little confused. What was going on? His brother not only asked the Zhuang family to take Cici away, but also asked them to take Xiaobao away? Wasn't this the same as losing the wife and losing the son? At this time, Zhuang Zongren took a deep breath and tried to speak again. Little treasure, come to Grandpa Zhuang, okay? Little Bao hesitated for a moment before he finally walked over to Zhuang Zongren. Zhuang Zongren looked at the little child's determination to protect his mother. He watched as the child walked toward him with uncertainty and looked back every few steps. His heart ached and he carefully picked up the little fellow. After comforting Xiaobao, Zhuang Zongren ordered the accompanying medical staff to transfer the patient. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.